Hey guys, it's the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for December 20th, 2024. We're going to be doing the Thursday thoughts on the Week 16 NFL picks against the spread for the 2024 NFL season. Before we do all the intros, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. So you can see I'm wearing a gray Walter Football t-shirt. Yes, I have changed shirts. I wore the same one Tuesday, Wednesday, but new shirt here on Thursday. It's a gray one, which means it's part of our winter collection, our fancy winter collection here at the merch store. And winter is coming, as Ned Stark said. Winter is coming tomorrow, actually. So you can get that. You can get any of these shirts in any color, actually. We have a 24% off sale. They deleted 3 of our shirts, unfortunately, as I mentioned yesterday, but I'm working to get them back. I think they should be back on Saturday. So looking forward to that. Also, you can go to Amazon, buy our books. Jerks of the College Years is my most recent one, where I made fun of people in college that I saw at Penn State for 6 years. How the 2020 MVP was stolen is an expose I actually wrote a few years ago about how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people don't know about that story, so if you guys might find it interesting if you haven't read it yet. So you can check that out as well. Or please consider super chats and super stickers. That's the best way to support the show. Past couple of days, we had John Sanders and Slew helping us out as usual. You guys have been so awesome. A little more recent, a little further away from that was Joe for Show. Can't Make an Eagle, Jesse Cintron, and once again, guys, you've been so amazing with your contributions because YouTube ads pay nothing. So these super chats, super stickers just really help us out so much. All right, so we are joined once again by Andy Iskoe. Andy, how are you? And how was your Week 15?
I'm fine, Walt. I hope you are as well. And before we forget, although I don't think we would, let's wish all the viewers and listeners a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy if you don't celebrate anything, and then a Happy New Year for all. So whatever you decide to do over the next 10, 12 days, enjoy it. Hope it all goes well. Last week started off nicely because I did have a Navy over Army, and the game turned out to be a lot easier than perhaps I thought it might be, but that was the right side as far as that goes. NFL was pretty much a mixture at all. I was fortunate with Denver coming through for me. I was not fortunate with Miami not playing well in that game at Houston. Not that it was all that of a surprise. Miami was actually due for a poor performance, and they put it in last week. And now we'll talk about it a little bit, but now it certainly hurts their playoff chances as far as making it in. Tonight's game with Denver losing to the Chargers makes things a lot more interesting because by the end of the weekend, it's possible that we could. No, we can't really. No, we could because the teams that are 8-6 could all lose, and that would end up eliminating. I think a lot of or could all lose and end up with 6-9, and that I think would put them all out. So, nonetheless, the rest of the week was pretty decent. I was very, I do a podcast I think with another handicapper who you probably would know, Mark Lawrence. And yep. One of the things we do on the podcast the last few weeks is, what was your best bet of the week? What was your worst bet of the week? Well, my best bet of the week was Navy, in the colleges. My worst bet of the week was on the LA Chargers, who got totally swamped by a Tampa Bay team that now has on its resume wins over the Chargers, wins over the Eagles, and a win over the Lions. That's very impressive for a Tampa Bay team. And you know what? That's a team that is very much under the radar. We see that the Lions have some issues right now. With that loss, of course, it now puts the number 1 seed very much in play with Philadelphia and Minnesota. Tampa Bay, and now, of course, they don't have anything locked up because they don't even have the tiebreaker edge against Atlanta, who is only 1 game behind them. So it's going to be very interesting in the NFC, but I'd keep an eye on Tampa Bay. I mean, Baker Mayfield is just doing just tremendous things. I mean, from where he was and what he's got, he's going to get himself a nice contract after the year. So it was a mixed week last week, but hopefully this week will be a little bit better because I like to go out finish the season strong, and especially when it comes to some of the contests that you and I talked about before we started recording.
Yeah, the Super Contest has the last 3-week mini contest, so pretty big deal. If you go 14-1. You might win and definitely cash in 15-0. Obviously, you'll win probably. So, it's definitely interesting here. Even if you have done poorly earlier in the season, couple comments
By the
here.
way, just as an interruption there for a moment, for people considering the contest next year, the two main contests where you pick 5 games a week are the Westgate and the Circa. Now, the Circa pays more money, and they have 4 in-season contests that you can win. Quarterly contests, a 4-week quarter, 5-week quarter, 4-week quarter, 5-week quarter. So there are several opportunities, including going for the worst record. The problem, I won't say the problem, but the thing to keep in mind is they do pay 100 places, but they also have this year almost 6,000 entries. Now, the Westgate, which has lost business to Circa, they had only about 1,100 entries this year. But in addition to the full season-long contest, they actually have 10 in-season contests. They have 3 6-week contests, 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 18. 6 3-week contests, 1 through 3, 4 through 6, etc. And 2 9-week contests, 1 through 9, 10 through 18. And then, of course, they also offer a reboot in addition to their gold. So they don't pay as much because the entry field is lower, but you're going up against fewer contestants. And that's what I tell people, because I do the proxying for a lot of people. I tell them, they always ask me, which contest would you prefer? I said, well, if you want a better chance of winning, the Westgate gives you more opportunities, but you're not going to win as much. At the same time, in addition to having more contest to give you opportunities, you're going up against fewer people. If, on the other hand, you're looking to win as much as possible and the odds are longer, but the Circa is better suited for your goals if you have that. So that's normally what we say. So with the Westgate, you have more of an opportunity to win less, but I mean, we're still talking about 5 figures and 6 figures for the overall winner of the contest. So that's just something for those people because I've gotten some inquiries from people about the contests, and they want to know the difference between the two. And I basically just summed it up right there. It's a question of, is your goal to cash or is your goal to win as much money as possible? Because those would lead to two different decisions.
Yeah. And you've been proxying for me for 15 years. So,
and I've been entering both contests, by the way. So, myself.
Yeah. I highly recommend Andy if you guys want to enter the Super Contest or the Circa. Use them as your proxy because
by the way, just unless they change the rules, you do have to sign up in Las Vegas, and then you provide your proxy each week with the selections by email or online or however, and then the proxy who has to be in Las Vegas or the person who enters your selections, and in this case it's the proxy, has to be in the state of Nevada, not necessarily Las Vegas, but within the state of Nevada.
Yeah.
To do it.
So if you guys have interest in entering the Super Contest or the Circa Million, definitely contact Andy or contact me. I'll get you in touch with Andy if you want for him to proxy for you, because Andy's super reliable. And even if you forget to enter submit your picks, you say you will enter in the 5 biggest underdogs, right? So
yeah, I'm going to rethink that a little bit because we're seeing smaller lines this year, I think, than in the past. I haven't done the study yet, but I have to imagine the average closing line this year is lower than it's been the last number of years. Even though there's been more imbalance this year, you've got the very, very good teams at the top, and you've got very, very bad teams in the bottom. And whereas you used to have a stacked middle, you don't have as big of a middle class this season because you've got a lot of teams who, are 9 wins with 3 games to go, and a lot of teams that have 3 wins with 3 games to go, and not that many in that right now 7-7 region with 3 games to go that you would have, or 6 and 8, or 8 and 6s, etc., compared to what we've had in years past. So I think that as a result, I've always used the largest underdogs. I may start thinking to mix it in a little bit with some favorites, but I won't know that until I do my off-season analysis of the previous few seasons to just see if it's worth structuring. Although, keep in mind, a lot of the underdogs did very well early in the season, but again, a lot of them were not big-priced underdogs.
Yeah, that is true. It's flipped this year. This year has been the year of the favorite. So I don't know.
It has been lately, but remember the first few weeks when everybody, even in Survivor, was getting blown out by underdogs winning straight up what was it? I think it was like at one time underdogs were like 19-2 or something like that.
Oh,
it was like half of them winning straight up, after 3 or 4 weeks, and then it was I think about 5 or 6 weeks into the season, underdogs had a nice edge, and then favorites have turned that around over the last 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Patriots beat the Bengals week 1, the Raiders beat the Ravens week 2. Everyone loved the Raiders week 3. The Panthers beat them. It's It was pretty wild.
I just did some research this night for a call I was on with someone, with a client actually. Favorites this year are I think it's 101, 101, 111, or 101, 107, and 6 or something like that. Maybe it's 104, 111. Yeah, I think it's 104, 111, and 6 with I think 3 pick'ems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
or 7 pick'ems. 6. No, 6. I think 3 pick'ems and I think 6 pushes in there.
It's definitely better recently.
Yeah.
It's right.
Favorites have caught up, but they're still behind underdogs.
Okay.
But not by as much as they were even 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, sure. Patrick, any new shows we're checking out? I'm off from my contract job a lot during the holidays, so looking for some new ones to check out. Well, Squid Game season 2 is coming out on December 26th, so you have that. I don't have much time during the football season, so I haven't really watched anything outside of step-by-step reruns on HBO Max, because I was actually looking for
which show?
Step by Step with
okay.
It was with Suzanne Summers and the late Suzanne Summers, unfortunately, and
I saw one. I haven't seen the show yet, but I heard some interviews with some of the folks about it on. I think it's on streaming on Max. It's called Bookie. Have you seen or heard about that one?
I saw like a brief commercial for it, but I didn't get to check it out.
I haven't seen it, but I'd be interested on looking at that one on Max.
Yeah, Patrick Duffy was the male lead. He was in Dallas, but so yeah, I watched the show as a kid, and I went on HBO Max because I was looking for 2 shows people recommended. Which one was The Penguin, and the other was Industry, which is it features Kit Harington, for Game of Thrones. So he's in there too. So those are 2 shows that were recommended to me. So I logged into HBO Max, and like the first thing that came up was like Step by Step. I'm like, oh my God, I used to watch this with my sister and my mom when I was a kid. I was like, I want to see.
Which one was that?
Step by Step.
Which one was that? Because you okay, you broke up a little bit there. So.
Oh yeah. So I watched it with my sister and my mom, and when I was a kid, and so I wanted to see how it held up in this day, and I have to say it's pretty funny. Some of the plot lines are kind of ridiculous, but I do laugh at it. I think it's pretty funny. But yeah, so like I said, Squid Game season 2, Industry and Penguin I wanted to watch, and of course From season 3. I think the season might be completely aired now. I'm not sure. Oh, and the Cobra Kai came back for this final season. I haven't watched that yet either. I'm just like waiting until the football season is over to catch up on my shows here. So unfortunately, I haven't really gotten into anything recently, but I will soon. So, and then John says I screened the TV when the Broncos took the field goal. Sutton needed 11 more yards. That parlay suggested. Yeah,
you mean the Broncos?
The Broncos. Yeah. That was really upsetting. Like they settled for a 55-yard field goal. Like I get it, just to save time, but like a 55-yard field goal is not nearly automatic. And
they still had, I think at that time, didn't they have? I know they had at least 2, if not all 3 of their timeouts. At least at the very least they could have tried to. I mean, yeah, you want to get the points as soon as possible, but you're right. If they could have moved and picked up another 15, 20 yards, maybe they take another 35 seconds off the clock, depending upon, if you complete the pass and the guy gets out of bounds or something, or you have to use one of the timeouts. At least you would then have an opportunity to have to need only to get a better chance at making the field goal, because if you miss the field goal, game's over.
Yeah, I mean, take some shots at the end zone at least.
Yeah, I've always felt, when you figure a game plan, or let's say a strategy plan, it should all depend on what happens on first down, because first down puts you in position to determine how to play second down and third down. If you gain 6 or 7 yards on first down, no reason you can't go for a big play on second down, because if you miss the big play, then your goal should be just get the 3 or 4 yards you need for third down, and then the sequence starts over.
Yeah.
See, I was at the game Monday night here at the thrilling game between the Raiders and the Falcons. And, it was amazing how I guess they weren't paying attention because almost every play the Falcons were running Robinson to the right, and he kept picking up yards. I mean, it was so easy. They must have done it about 40% of the time that you could see him running to the right. On the other hand, and this was something that didn't realize at the time, the first punt that the Falcons had, I think, went into the end zone. And I think I think either the next two or two of the next three punts, they were in about the same position, and they took the delay of game penalty each time to move back 5 yards, which made perfect sense because they wanted to pin the Raiders inside at least the 10-yard line. And the first time they did it, they pinned them inside the 5-yard line. So I said to my friend who we were at the game, I was sitting with him, and I said, I'll tell you what the Raiders are going to do. It's okay. 1st and 10 from their own 4. They're going to run the first play, gain, and lose a yard. They're going to run the second play and lose a yard, and then they're going to get a safety. And sure enough, first down, they run, they lose a yard. So now they're on the 3-yard line. And they outdid me. They lost 2 yards on the second down play.
Yeah.
And then on the third down, the Falcons got the safety. I mean, it was just some horrible play calling. Awful. And, I can't blame Antonio Pierce for that. But I think the offensive coordinator, who I think has already been an interim one, I think is not going to be there. But game management is such an important part of handicapping because you so often see coaches that repeatedly do the wrong thing. Now, there are some times that you take some chances that are justified. But for example, when Dan Campbell made that decision, what was it, last week? On his own territory to go for it on 4th down, I think it was. Yeah, it was early 31. In the game. What's that?
I think.
From his own 31. Yeah. It didn't make sense to do it that early in the game or at that point in the game because I think it was still the first half. I think it was second quarter, if I remember. I think that's the decision we're talking about. He's known to be a risk taker, which is fine, but you also have to analyze and understand the implications. They all think they're going to succeed, okay? But you have to be aware of the implications if you fail. And if you fail, and we've seen some other teams do it, you're basically conceding a field goal from that point on the field. So not only have you not accomplished what you're going to do, you've actually conceded, you've not technically conceded them, but more likely than not, unless there's a turnover, or that they make, or that they lose ground, you're conceding 3 points and just digging yourself a deeper hole. You want to do that from your own 31 and you're down by 2 scores late in the third quarter. Maybe that's a little different. And again, it depends on the play you run. But we see the same coaches, and I'm not going to pick on Dan Campbell because he's done a lot of good things that maybe a lot of people didn't think he should have done. Like that game before, I think it was, where he went for it late in the game and didn't take the field goal and ran more time off the clock, and that seemed to be the right thing to do because you wanted to end the game with the opposition. In this case, it was Green Bay not having a chance to come back with any time on the clock, and I think that was the game, and get a chance. You want to end the game because the game I think was tied at the time. So you want a chance with that little time left to end the game, deciding whether or not you're going to win or you're going to go into overtime.
Right. And on the other end of the spectrum, Sean Payton tonight punted on 4th and 5 at midfield with about, I think it was like 5 minutes left or 6 minutes left.
It was, I think, their second to last possession, right?
Yeah. And even Al Michaels like, oh, you have to punt here. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I feel like I would go for it here.
No, they were. What were they? They were only down by 3 at the time, right? No, I'm sorry. They were down by. They were down by 7.
Yeah.
No, it was 27. Was it 27-24? Wasn't it at that point?
No, I think.
But didn't the Chargers score after the punt?
I think.
So I think it was a 3-point game when he punted.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I would not have. Yeah, I would have gone for 4th and 5 because you're not. Because where was he? Was that like what was it on? What yard line was he on?
It was like the 50-yard line.
Yeah, you're not conceding anything at that point.
Right.
Okay. Right. At the very they were seeing it here. John Sanders, 27-25. At that point, if you don't make it, you still have you can hold the Denver Broncos down because they didn't really do much in the second half. Okay. Mm-hmm. They were up 21-13 at halftime. They had a field goal in the second half, so they hadn't done much. And at the very least, they're going to take time off the clock and unless they get a touchdown, you're probably going to have time left on the clock, because if they only need to go 30 yards and they don't get the touchdown, they're not going to be able to run that time off the clock. So the Chargers would still have an opportunity to go down and take the lead. And even if they scored a touchdown, there'd be time to do that. So I would say that would have been a risk worth taking by the Broncos. I'm glad they didn't, but
right, yeah. I mean, absolutely. They punted, and the Chargers ended up scoring anyway. So what did it matter?
But I will never say anything bad about Sean Payton, because he still had the best play in the history of the Super Bowl.
Right. Well,
that onside kick when they were down. Yeah, the NFL. We talked about NFL has to change that rule. They cannot make you. I think they should change the kickoff rule in general. But if you want to keep the kickoff rule the way it is, fine. Do not, by any means, change the rule about the onside kick. You don't have to declare it. You could at any time, even if you're in that kickoff formation. Although I guess you really can't change the kickoff rule, because if you didn't have to declare it, the way that the receiving team is so far back, you'd probably have a 60% rate doing it. So yeah, don't make the you know what? Just get to the rule. Go back to the rule the way it was for 100 years.
I know. It's so stupid.
I think we also said this other way. NFL, you want to stop all the injuries? Get rid of the Thursday night games, or at least don't make teams play 4 days after they've just played. Save it for teams coming off buys. Otherwise, all this injury stuff, concern, is a bunch of garbage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, start the Thursday games around week 6 when teams are coming off buys.
Exactly.
Even if you want, you can even do when in weeks where you have 4 or 6 teams off buys, you can maybe even have a double header on Thursday.
Well, you could do that, but the other thing is, excuse me, if you spread out the buys evenly, and I've talked about this before, you have 8 bye weeks, and all 4 teams from the same division have the same bye week.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially at the end of the year when you're playing division games. Although, again, even here, you've got some teams that are playing like 2 out of the last 3, maybe even 1 or 2 teams are playing 3 out of the last 3 division rivals. I'm not quite sure. Well, I know Buffalo is playing 3 division rivals, but they're playing the Patriots twice with the Jets in between. But especially at the end of the year, and I certainly in the last week of the season when they're all division games, let everybody have like an even amount of rest, whether it be 11 weeks since your bye or 6 weeks since your bye. Make it nice and fair. It makes a lot of sense. And I think it would add for more competitiveness in division races if you did have 3 division games to end the season.
It's ridiculous that some teams had a week 5 bye and some teams a week 14. It's not like
it's too early and too late, because the teams that have the week 14 bye, and they're in the playoffs, they're going to be really fresh. If you had a week 5 bye, unless you're one of the 2 teams that are number 1 seeds, you're going to have played for what, week 5? So 18, you'll have played 14 straight weeks at the end of the regular season.
Well, funny enough, the Lions and
13 Eagles, weeks.
Lions and the Eagles both had week 5 buys, so probably one of them will have a bye in the playoffs. So that's going to help.
Watch Minnesota spoil that and sneak in with the number 1 bye, because now they have a chance.
That's true. Although Vikings had a week 6 bye, so so
it doesn't really matter.
Right. So I totally agree. Have the bye weeks 8 through 11. Just do it that way, or at least back before 2002 when they had an odd number of teams, you would have some teams have a week 1 bye and a week 17 bye.
Yeah,
that was absurd.
Back in the early 90s, teams had 2 buys. I think for 1 or 2 seasons. Yeah,
I remember the 2 bye season. But no, can you imagine being a huge fan of a team and waiting for the season to start, and they're like, wait, you have a week 1 bye, you have to wait another season. You have to wait another
we had that one other time with a hurricane, I remember, that I think caused them to move a Miami New England game. And I think that may have been during I don't know if it was during that double bye season, that odd number when they had 31 teams. But I do remember that they had to cancel that game or postpone that game from week 1 to week, and I think they both I think had the same bye week by coincidence later in the season, and they had to play it that week, as I recall.
I vaguely remember that, and of course, when 9/11 happened, they moved all the week 2 games to the end of the season.
February and January.
Yeah. So that and then they had no week off for the Super Bowl because of that. So John bring up. I always thought you should take a whole week off in the middle of the regular season to give all the teams a bye week. I would be in favor of that. I would love to have a week
I
off.
would not want that at all. I would not want to
Really?
go an NFL week in October and not have any NFL games to bet on or to watch.
I personally would love it just to have like just a kind of a refresher and get some sleep here. I don't sleep more than 4.5 hours. So I'd
Yeah,
love
but
that.
the networks would never go for that.
I know.
Never. And you know who pays the bills.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, it will never happen. I just love the extra week off. I think it'd be cool. But yeah.
I see this one from was it Cassandra Future? I wonder how the Jets season would have played out had they not declined the early bye week, that brutal opening schedule following that.
Yeah.
After the London game, they would have lost the game more. They would have just delayed the losing games by an extra week.
It's probably true. What will Falcons end up doing with Kirk Cousins? Randy's asking. I don't see who would trade for him at this point.
No, he's got that big contract.
They probably have to bring him back next year. It's kind of like Deshaun Watson.
Well, the thing is that I can understand giving Penix a try. I just wonder how it. I mean, well, no, maybe it's because they're playing the Giants, but I'm wondering how advisable it is because there is pressure on Atlanta to keep winning because they hold the tiebreaker over Tampa Bay. And at the very least, Tampa Bay will take the field knowing what Atlanta did earlier in the day.
Right. Yeah.
So do you want a rookie's first real performance to be? By the way, I'll tell you guys be careful. You know, when you text on your phone and you type out anything about Michael Penix, check the autocorrect because they may change that last letter.
It has not happened to me yet, but it's good advice. All right. Let's. How about we get into the games here? So we have Texans at the Chiefs. There's a huge line swing in this game. The Texans were 2.5-point favorites to start, and now they're 3.5-point underdogs because Patrick Mahomes will play in this game. So I guess.
He's been cleared to play.
Yeah, he wasn't on the final injury report. He was. He didn't have his designation. So
no, but I'm saying he was clear. He's been medically cleared to play. That doesn't, because we could talk about this. Should he play? I'm not so sure. You know, they can afford one loss because they got that 2-game lead over Buffalo, but they can only afford the one loss. Okay, but they have to assume that Buffalo's going to win out because they play those 2 games against New England and the middle game against the Jets. Okay, now the schedule for here are the 2 thoughts. Okay, number one. Maybe Andy Reid is showing some gamesmanship, and maybe he has no intention of having Mahomes play. But you know what? So let's have Houston spend more time, preparing for Patrick Mahomes and less time than to prepare for his backup, Carson Wentz. Okay? And it's all a ruse, and we're going to play Carson Wentz and not play Mahomes. Okay? Or play him very limited and a big lead or a big deficit. They pull him out and him for the next game. However, the next game is the Thursday game, short week, at Pittsburgh. And that's clearly a game Kansas City could lose. Okay? So the question is, do you play Mahomes this week, the game that you should win, and get another win versus before Buffalo plays on Sunday, or do you rest him and play him for a game that's more important? I would probably end up playing Mahomes as much as needed to get the more winnable. The more winnable game is the game against Houston, okay? Because that's at home, and the next 2 games, I think. Well, I guess Week 18 is a winnable game. I think they host Denver. I'm sorry, I think they're.
It's Denver.
It's against. It's at Denver, I think, right? Yeah, it's at Denver. And Denver likely could be playing, or they could already have clinched a playoff spot, because, again, they have those 9 wins. And if they get to 10 wins, they've eliminated everybody who's currently in that 4, 5, 6 spot because the best that those guys can do is 9 and 8. Now, they've already played this week, but Denver, I think, plays Cincinnati next week at Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati, if they lose to Cleveland, they'll be eliminated from the playoffs because the best they could do would then be 8 and 9 because they're 6 and 8 right now. So if I'm Kansas City, I might very well use Mahomes, but maybe only use him for part of the game until you get the lead and then turn it over to your defense, which is still very good. So, I'm probably not playing that game regardless because I don't know what Andy Reid will do. I trust his judgment, okay? I'm saying, isn't it illegal to fudge on an injury report?
Yeah, the fact that they didn't give him a
that doesn't mean you have to play someone.
I think it does. I if you don't designate him, like if they plan to not play him, then I think they'd have to put him as questionable at least. But they didn't.
And maybe they. Well, yeah. You know what? Isn't everybody questionable? Really?
But,
now it doesn't have to. It comes down with the flu or something.
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah.
But if the NFL finds out about that like they decided not to play him ahead of time, but didn't designate him, then they would forfeit a draft pick. So it is risky to do that. So.
It is risky. Yeah, they would fine him out. But what if Patrick Mahomes starts going on the walkthrough on Saturday, starts coughing,
right?
And he doesn't tell anybody, which would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah, there'll be investigations. People will be calling for Andy Reid's head, like with Belichick with the or Tom Brady with the deflated footballs. So
yeah, no, I'm saying that I think it's all legit. I don't think it's a ruse. But you know what? The possibility is not zero. It may be very small, but it's not zero. And again, suppose the Chiefs get off to a 21-0 lead in that game in the second quarter, and you pull Mahomes. Nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They look. First of all, they got a game to play 4 nights later, or 4 days. Actually, I think it's 3 days later. Don't they play on Christmas?
Yeah. So it's.
Oh no, they're playing. They're playing Saturday this week. That's right. They're playing Saturday.
It's the same Sunday to Thursday and Saturday to Wednesday.
Or what if he looks like he pulls a hamstring on Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's silly to play him, given that he could barely walk last week. Last week being, like it's not even a full week of recovery, and then like you said, he has another game in 4 days. So it's. I think the Chiefs could win this game with Carson Wentz. Like that's my thing here. Like Houston has been very unimpressive. They can't block. It's a tough.
Yeah, but Kansas City, you're asking Kansas City to score with Carson Wentz when they haven't been able to score with Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes can beat you with with his legs too.
Yeah, well, Wentz can do that with his legs. Wentz is very mobile.
He's a few years. He's probably past his prime right now. He's been in the league 6, 7, 8 years.
Since 20, he's only a year older than Mahomes. I started.
Plus, he's rusty.
I started Wentz. I started Wentz in a Week 18 DraftKings lineup where I made a foolish decision to bench James Conner in favor of Zamir White, and that ended up costing me $50,000, unfortunately.
Ooh.
But the point of that is I had Wentz as my quarterback, and he ran for like 100 yards in that game last year. He can run. That's like probably the only thing he can do. And Houston.
And by the way, Houston's also a decent defensively. In fact, I know we haven't really talked about the game. My play in the game, if I do anything, will be the under.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't see either team scoring much. Houston's defense does some things extremely well. They rush the passer very well, which is troublesome for the Chiefs because of their left tackle situation.
Yep.
Houston is 4th in missed tackles this year. They allow a lot of like short passes to go for a lot longer than they should.
Yeah.
And so Mahomes is kind of,
how is Kansas City with big plays? What plays over 15, 20 yards?
I mean, I'm not sure about big plays or anything, but Houston has 95 missed tackles this year. Only the Colts, Rams, and Raiders only have more. They're the only teams that have more. So I worry about that, especially with Marquise Brown coming back, and also Pacheco should be a week healthier. Yeah. Houston's weak against the run, but still, I don't trust a hobbled quarterback to cover a -3.5. So I will be on Houston, but I can't bring myself to bet them because this game is pretty meaningless to them. Like maybe they want to see this as a tune-up for the playoffs or something. Yeah. But they this game doesn't mean anything to them. They just clinched the division. They can't really move up. It'll take a miracle to get to the 3rd seed. Really, they could do it, but it's gonna be tough because one of Pittsburgh or Baltimore will win at 4:00, so they have to catch one of them. And so they're just stuck in the 4 seed. If they lose these next 3 games, they'll still be the 4 seed. So, like, what do they have?
Houston's clinched the playoff position, but not the division. but they're in the playoffs.
Oh, they clinched the division because
I thought they.
Yeah, because they had the tiebreaker over Indy, and Indy is 6-8, so Indy can only.
Okay,
Go
I don't know why
minus.
it's not showing on my thing here. It's showing that
Yeah.
they can't convinced a. No, you're right. Okay, I'm just checking. I can't distinguish between an X and a Z. That's my problem. Yeah, Pittsburgh is the only team that has clinched a playoffs in the AFC.
Mhm.
KC, Buffalo, and Houston have all clinched their division. Pittsburgh can clinch it with a win over Baltimore.
Yep. Yeah. So so Houston really has nothing to play for, but again,
Yeah, I mean, what the worst they could technically do? I suppose they could move up to maybe the number 3 seed, but I don't. That doesn't really matter. It just means who you're going to play, and you don't know who you're going to play in the wild card round anyway right now. Right. So yeah, the game has more meaning for Kansas City. It really does. I mean, because they need to win to keep ahead of Buffalo. They can afford one loss, but this is probably the easiest of the 3 games because a game at Pittsburgh won't be very easy, and the game in Denver won't be very easy, especially if Denver needs the win.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Denver doesn't need the win, then in fact, if Denver has already clinched the playoff spot, I would think that they would be smart in resting everybody in Week 18 because they got to play the wild card round.
Right. It's
and if Kansas City needs to win to wrap up the number 1 seed, they will play everybody because they're not playing in the wild card round.
Yeah, it's unusual for a 13-1 team to have more to play for than a team that's 9-5. But
yeah,
that's what it is here.
Well, you can similar when we get to the Washington-Philadelphia game. It's not quite the same because Washington has something to play for, but so does Philadelphia now that they're tied with the Vikings and Lions.
Well, that was
so my play in this game would be the under.
Okay, yeah, that one's to clinch the division for the Eagles, so I think they'll show up for that one. But let's get to the second game here, Pittsburgh at Baltimore. So we have good news and bad news for the Steelers. Good news is that T.J. Watt will play. He doesn't have an injury designation. The bad news is that George Pickens is out. So on one hand,
he's definitely been ruled out. He's not even doubtful.
He's been ruled out. Yeah. So the Steelers will be able to contain Lamar Jackson as they have in the past 6 meetings. Baltimore hasn't scored more than 20 points. The Steelers have the secret sauce here. They built their defense to stop Lamar Jackson. It's worked. So the key is to having those edge rushers or those edge players to contain Jackson in the pocket, which is what they've done phenomenally. But on the other hand, they can't take advantage of Baltimore's weakness, which is stopping the pass. Like, who's Russell Wilson going to throw to? Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, Mike Williams. These guys aren't good. Like, Pickens was their main deep threat. They don't have him. Yeah,
and we've seen it the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think exactly. And I think Pat Freiermuth could have a good game, but it's really going to be a defensive slog here. I think the Ravens could pull this one out, even though the Steelers have owned this matchup. Just with no receivers, I can't bet Pittsburgh, but I don't want to bet Baltimore at -6 either. So I'm on Pittsburgh for no units, just an officeable play. What are your thoughts on this game?
I do like Pittsburgh. I have to go with the history of the series. I mean, Pittsburgh played Baltimore and defeated them with a weak receiving core, with different quarterbacks, other than Big Ben over the years. You have to believe, it's different than teams that have the record that Pittsburgh has against Baltimore, say over the last 5 or 6 years. Okay. Is different than a team with a similar record over the same opponent over the same period of time, because in those other situations you've usually had coaching changes for one or both teams. You don't have that here. These guys have been coaching since the late 2000s. I think Tomlin came in 2007 and Harbaugh came in 2008. And you have to wonder if Tomlin has something over Harbaugh in this series. Both of these teams have been strong defensive teams over this period. Pittsburgh with Roethlisberger had a decent offense, and Baltimore has never really had that kind of offense. They do now, and actually Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback they've had over this period, and he's the one that Pittsburgh's been able to defend. So I like Pittsburgh plus the 6 or 6.5. And again, I maybe Baltimore will win and cover, but Pittsburgh is also playing, and this is very important. And point spread could come in. They're playing to win because all of a sudden, if they lose, they're both tied atop the division, with 2 games to go. And Pittsburgh's been in charge of this division basically since week 1. So I have to think that whatever it takes, and then, of course, with T.J. Watt being back, and, of course, their history against Lamar Jackson, I have to believe that Pittsburgh is going to use the short passing game and, Najee Harris to run the ball and lengthen drives, shorten the game to give Baltimore as fewer possessions as possible because they don't want to give Baltimore many opportunities to win this game. Doesn't mean Baltimore will win the game if they do have more possessions, and it doesn't mean that Baltimore can't cover. Would I be surprised if Baltimore wins this game 27-14 like the Eagles did last week? No, I wouldn't be surprised. But given the history and the familiarity, I can't lay the points with the Ravens, and given the history, I have to take them. If Baltimore had clinched the division by now, if Pittsburgh had clinched the division by now, I'd probably give more weight to Baltimore winning and covering, but I can't do that here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So John asking about the Ravens, who has the tiebreaker? It both finished 12-5. Let's see here. So can we do this? I'm actually.
Well, if Pittsburgh wins, that means they would be 1-1 against Cleveland, and I think Baltimore still has to play Cleveland. Because I know Cleveland beat them the first time.
According to the playoff machine, the Steelers would have the tiebreaker at over Baltimore. So
yeah,
that's what.
Well, I know that Pittsburgh. One of Pittsburgh's losses would have been to Dallas in the NFC, which helps. I don't know if did Baltimore lose to an NFC team.
The Eagles.
Okay. And so did Pittsburgh.
Right.
So Pittsburgh has 2 losses against NFC teams.
That's probably what it comes down to is the conference record there. So, Nico says, I have 3 running back options. I have Barkley, James Conner, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. Okay, so you can play 3 of those 4. I think Barkley and Conner have to be in your lineup. Henry has a very difficult matchup. Jacobs has a very easy matchup. So
against the Saints on Monday night, yeah.
I would leave out Henry, as crazy as it sounds. He didn't have a good game against Pittsburgh the first time, so why would he again, especially with Watt there? I would leave Henry out. Do you agree, Andy?
Is Barkley healthy? Is he fully recovered?
Well, he practiced fully today. So.
Yeah, so I guess you could count on that. Yeah, I think I'd have to go Barkley, especially since he had for him a subpar week last week. Mm-hmm. And he is going up against a Washington defense Washington's defense, and we can talk about it again, but Washington's defense has actually played well over the second half of the season compared to the first half of the season. At the same time, and I forget what the numbers are, but I wrote it up this week. Let me see if I can find it. The Eagles, as good as they were in the first half of the season, first 7 games, when they averaged 160 yards per game, in their last 7 games, they've been averaging 207 yards. So 41 yards, 166 to 207. And, of course, Barkley had a lot to do with that. So I think you can't eliminate Barkley because, again, and we'll talk about it in the game, Philadelphia has every reason to play hard in this game. Conner, well, he's going up against a pretty weak defense.
Yeah,
I'd have to say Derrick Henry, probably. Although if I'm Baltimore, I would say, you know what? They're going to concentrate, as they have in the past, on shutting down Lamar Jackson. We may have to use a lot of Derrick Henry to combat that so that they pay more attention to Derrick Henry and less attention to Lamar Jackson in certain situations. So that's the only point I could make for possibly choosing Henry over one of the others. But who would I choose him over? Maybe Josh Jacobs, only to the extent that Green Bay may need him later, and it should be an easy win against New Orleans, and maybe they want to save him because they're going to be playing in the wild card round.
Yeah, this is the same defense that just shut down Saquon Barkley, even though the Eagles held the ball forever in that second half.
Yeah.
So, the only question is, having clinched the division, will Houston want to compete in this game? That's my issue. I don't know if Houston's going to show up. If Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, Steelers will control their own destiny, but that means they still have to beat the Chiefs. So it's not really controlling.
And Cincinnati.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, Cincinnati might
No.
be desperate as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is with what was the first comment he made there about Houston? Okay, Houston can't improve. Yeah, okay, Houston can't improve their position. They're locked in. Well, you know what? They could win the number 3 seed, but again, it doesn't matter because you don't know who you're playing. You know, let's assume for argument's sake that the Chargers, Broncos, and either the Ravens or Steelers hold down that wild card spot. Okay, all win where they're at now. Would you rather play the Chargers? Would you rather play the Broncos? Would you rather play the Ravens? You'd probably rather play the Broncos or the Chargers, but you don't know which way it'll be.
Right. Yeah.
Although the Chargers now have the advantage of the tiebreaker. So in other words, maybe the number 4 seed. Let's say the 5 seed. Let's say the Chargers are the number 5 seed and the Broncos are the number 6 seed. You may want. Would you want to play the Chargers, who are they're both relatively new to the playoffs. But the Chargers have not played all that well of late, and Denver's been on a nice little roll. I mean, they got fortunate last week, but they still ended up winning comfortably against the Colts. And they could have won the game tonight. And again, it was a game of need for both teams tonight. The Broncos needed to win to stay a game ahead of the Chargers, and the Chargers would have been 2 games ahead actually if they had lost because they were 1 game ahead going in. And the Chargers needed the game to not fall 2 games behind, and in fact, in theory, be 1 game ahead of the Broncos because the season sweep. Even though they're tied, they have the tiebreaker. So, I'm not sure that Houston would benefit all that much. I mean, they're going to go out there and play. They're not going to get home field against Kansas City. If they face them in the playoffs, so it's meaningless from that standpoint. Houston can certainly win this game, and I think they're going to go out there and try because that's what ball players do. Okay, the question is, if they fall enough behind, will they just concede? In the second half, because Kansas City might do the same thing if they're comfortably ahead or behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Houston can, if Houston and Pittsburgh have the same record, Houston will pass Pittsburgh to be the 3rd seed. But do they really want to go all out and do that? I don't know. It just seems like it's very difficult for that to happen. So, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. So,
once you're in the playoffs, realistically, it'd be nice to, unless you're playing for the number 1 seed, if you're a division winner, as Houston is, you're going to get a home game. Mm-hmm. You might get a second home game depending upon what happens in the, in that divisional round.
Right. Exactly. So and then the Broncos probably miss the playoffs if they lose to the Bengals and Chiefs now. Yeah, well, if the Chiefs, it depends if they need to play in Week 18. If they don't, it could be Carson Wentz. Although,
not only that, they may already have wrapped up a playoff spot if those 3 6 and 8 teams all lose.
Yeah,
one more time.
That's true. Let's get to one of those.
If was it Miami, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis all lose this week, they drop to 6 and 9. Chargers, Broncos, and Ravens already have 9 wins. And all 3 of them can clinch this week.
All 6 and 8 teams are favored.
What's that? Miami's basically a pick'em.
Yeah.
But they're playing another beat-up team flying cross country with now down to their 4th-string running back.
Yeah, and the way San Francisco's injuries are going, I think Miami might be favored by the closing line. Let's get to this. One of those 6 and 8 teams. The Bengals are hosting the Browns. This line keeps climbing. It was 7, now it's 8.5, and
I think they look more into the career of Robinson versus Winston.
Yeah, well, that was the initial move. It was from 7 to 7.5 was Winston to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and then today Myles Garrett was downgraded. In fact, David Njoku DNP twice. So I love the Bengals this week. I don't see how the Browns come out and compete here with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Andy, I asked this question to both Evan on Tuesday and Kenny on Wednesday, my co-hosts on those 2 nights. So let's see how you do. So I looked at the EPA of all quarterbacks who started, who have thrown at least 60 passes since the beginning.
At least, I'm sorry, you broke up a little. At least what?
Of all quarterbacks who've thrown at least 60 passes since the beginning of 2023.
Touchdown passes, you mean?
No, no, no.
Oh,
There's only
that's okay.
60
So it's a
passes
big
overall.
universe we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, so there have been 68 quarterbacks who've met that criteria. Where do you think Dorian Thompson Robinson ranks amongst the 68 quarterbacks?
69th.
I mean,
In the bottom 10%, in the bottom say in the bottom 6. That'd be my
he is.
guess.
Yeah, he's 67th. The only
Okay.
quarterback who was worse than him is another Cleveland Brown quarterback. It was Philip Walker from last year.
Who? Yeah.
Philip Walker, yeah, PJ Walker, whatever you want to say. The XFL legend, PJ Walker. Who he actually won me a DraftKings XFL contest. So I will always.
By the way, you know why you may not want to play this game?
Why is that?
If Baltimore wins on Saturday, I don't know. Does that eliminate the Bengals? No, I guess they could still end up with 9 wins.
Bengals get into the playoffs if they win out and Denver loses out, which they play each other week 17, so possible. And Indianapolis has to lose 1 game.
Yeah.
And at any point. So the Bengals are.
So Cincinnati will take the field with a mathematical chance of making the playoffs. That's all that matters.
A good chance, I think. If they win this game, they beat Denver, and then they win against the Steelers team that might sit its starters.
Yeah.
And then Denver has to lose to them in week 17, and then maybe to the Chiefs. Like that. That's very possible. And the Colts, like I said, Colts have to lose 1 game. But
I'd like to see the Bengals in the playoffs. It might not last long.
Miami would have to lose 1 also. I think that's right. Yeah, Miami. Well, I think Miami has to lose 1 also. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, still, it's very, I think very feasible here. Slew saying the Bengals have 3 illnesses here, which kind of sets off a red flag. Yeah, I'm seeing Cody Ford, illness, Chris Jenkins, and Sheldon Rankins. So, okay, yeah, that. So
what does the injury look for defensive players for that team for the Bengals?
For the Bengals,
defensive players.
The only thing I'm seeing here is Sam Hubbard is DNP twice. I think he's already out with the knee injury.
Because that's really what you have to be. That's what you really have to be concerned about with Cincinnati, the defense.
Chris Jenkins and Sheldon Rankins both DNP twice with the illnesses. So we'll see what happens with this illness.
Illnesses, that could be gone in 48 hours.
It could, but it could also spread, which I think could be an issue. So that's absolutely something to monitor. So thanks, Lou, for that. The only question I think here for me is the illnesses now, but I view this as something similar to what we saw a few weeks ago when the Giants benched Daniel Jones in favor of Tommy DeVito, and they were a complete no-show against the Buccaneers. Tampa absolutely dismantled them. I don't see the incentive here for the Browns, at least with Winston. They could say, "Oh, we're building something for next year," and then the receivers could say, "Hey, we're gonna post good stats here, at least with Winston." That's not going to happen with Dorian Thompson.
Well, the other thing is this may give an opportunity for Robinson to show that maybe he is a quarterback that could be serviceable next year, and he's going up against one of the weaker defenses that he would have to face.
I just don't. I mean, he played against them already, and he was awful. I don't see. I don't think he has what it takes. I think he's just an awful player. I don't think he can ever.
Then why are they even making the change?
I think to tank. I think that's what they're doing. That's what the Giants did. They wanted to tank, and I think that's what the Browns are doing. A little too late because they already have 4 wins.
Yeah.
But no, I just I really don't see the Browns showing up. I think they're a complete no-show. And the Bengals obviously need to win. Now that doesn't mean they're going to cover, but I think that the incentive is there for them. I think they win,
especially with Garrett out.
Right. Yeah. I think they win very easily, provided this illness isn't a factor. So this might
that can spread around. Yeah.
Right. This will be my top play of the week. It could be even higher than that. So what are your thoughts here?
I laid 7 with the Bengals earlier in the week. I'm happy with that number. I don't know that I would lay more than that right now, but then again, I'm biased because I don't have to. At the same time, there are other games that I like better. So this is even when it comes down to making the contest picks, this was never a game that I had, in on my radar.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cincinnati will certainly be in my contest place. Unless like Friday comes and there's like 8 illnesses, like okay, maybe
Now
stay
let me
away
see
from.
what the line is. 7.5
Yeah,
in
yeah,
both contests. Yeah, so
I,
it's still a
I
good number. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this line should be at least 10. I don't
Yeah.
see why it's only 7.5. Bills or Packers defense on fantasy? That's a great question because they're both great plays. I don't think you can go wrong. I think I would go with Buffalo only because Drake May tends to make a lot more mistakes. Now Spencer Rattler can make mistakes too, but at least
Yeah.
like Rattler might be more careful with the ball. Like May's pretty reckless, so I think I would go Bills. Like I said, you can't go wrong. Two great options.
Well, the reason I might go with the Packers is the Saints. Well, first of all, the Patriots are used to the weather conditions that they're going to be encountering in Buffalo, if
True,
anything.
true.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that game later. The Packers are facing a team that's playing for nothing in New Orleans. They're banged up with a lot of people. Kamara's going to be out, I think I read today. They have no quarterback. You mentioned Rattler. They will be playing on a grass surface outdoors in the cold. They might not score very much in this game against them. Green Bay's got a decent defense, and you wonder how much the Bills, with their defense, has been taxed the last 2 weeks, giving up the 40-something points to the Rams and the 40-something points to the Lions. At some point, they're going to need a breather.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, yeah, again, it's a great point about the weather. So, yeah, even tougher. Tua, Rogers, Richardson, or Cooper Rush. Don't play Cooper Rush against.
And I'd rather have Derek May than the Saints quarterback, because at least he's showing he's getting an opportunity to show some improvement as a rookie week after week.
Yeah, he's great in garbage time. He's someone called him the next Blake Bortles. Remember that?
Well, he might have some garbage time this week.
Yeah, for sure. Here, this question: I would not play Rush against Todd Bowles. I would not play Richardson. He's just too erratic. I think that probably, if I would say if the Dolphins tackles play, then Tua. If not, Rodgers. That's pretty close.
Yeah, and I think that also with what was the other one there that Indianapolis Richardson you mentioned. Yeah, we'll get to that game, but that could be a game where we don't see all that much scoring.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, Bengals might be a good teaser
Absolutely.
option. Survivor, yeah. The Bengals are definitely a great teaser option for sure. All right, let's get to the next game, which is Lions at the Bears. So we have some.
By the way, the teaser option could be also tease them with Baltimore.
I don't know. I mean, the Steelers have owned them. I wouldn't be very comfortable there. I don't know. I don't like that one, and I couldn't find a good second teaser leg. I was looking. Maybe Atlanta, but I don't really trust that either.
Yeah, Atlanta might be one, although again they're starting a rookie.
Right.
There really is no one that would meet the normal criterion, because you're not in that 7-8 point range where you're basically I'm just asking to win the game, and underdogs. Well, there might be some underdogs worth. We could talk about some of those as they come up.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe you want to go next week to if you can. I don't know if they will let you, but if you say tease the Bengals with the Week 17 Packers plus 8.5 or 7.5.
Yeah, who are they playing?
At Minnesota.
At Minnesota, okay.
Yeah, so maybe I don't know if you can do that, but that's something to look into maybe. So yeah, we have Lions at the Bears here. A couple injury notes here: Graham Glasgow and Frank Ragnow, two Lions offensive linemen, were both DNPs both days. But then on the Bears side, they had two.
Lions are the 49ers of the second half of the season.
Yeah,
with the injuries.
Yes, a lot of injuries here. Ryan Bates and Tevin Jenkins DNP twice for the Bears. So we have two teams with two offensive linemen who might be out. So I'm not in love with that for the Lions. I do like the Lions if one of those guys plays. I really don't like to go against cluster injuries with a big favorite here. But here with the Lions, I don't see the Bears having a good game plan because they don't have a real head coach. They have an interim head coach, and then they don't have an offensive coordinator because the offensive coordinator is fired. They had an interim offensive coordinator.
He's now the interim coach.
Right, and now he's the interim coach, and he's not the offensive coordinator anymore. It's kind of like what the Jets did with Olbert. Their defense collapsed when they made Ulbrich the interim
And you
coach.
have to wonder, are the Bears really that motivated to play well when they, the first game against San Francisco, you expected a good effort for the new coach, Rah-Rah. It was about as bad an effort as you could have. And they weren't much better against Minnesota.
Yeah, I like.
And remember,
Lions.
Detroit can't fool around here. They're in
Right.
danger of giving up that number 1 seed because they still have to play Minnesota. So, and Detroit, who do they play in week 17?
They play against the Vikings. Oh no,
Okay.
sorry,
No, that's week 18. Yeah.
Niners, and then the Vikings.
Okay, maybe an easy game, but is that in San Francisco? I think it's in San Francisco, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it can't be taken. I think. I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm going. I mean, maybe Detroit is a team that you could conclude in that teaser at 6.5 down to -0.5. I can't see the Bears beating them, even all with people out, because in fact, if anything, you're going to see a more intense out of the Lions because they know that they need to play with I think they play with a greater intensity than the Bears because they do need to win.
Agreed. Yeah, and they're coming off a loss. Any good team coming off. I don't know if you call it an embarrassing loss. It was a 6-point loss, but really they were down by double digits for most of the game.
But it was also a loss to, maybe the best team in the AFC.
Right, but they were at home. They lost by double digits. They were favored. I feel like it qualifies it as an embarrassing loss, and I like playing good teams.
Well, they were coming off of a couple of really tight games. What was it against? Was it against Chicago and then Green Bay? So they were almost like Kansas City had been for so long, begging to be beaten. Yeah. Not that they were thinking about being beaten, but they had given signs that they were ripe for being upset under the right circumstances, and playing against a high-powered Buffalo team that obviously was in sync after what they did to the Rams the week before. It was somewhat of an understandable loss. I don't downgrade Detroit because of the loss. If anything about the Lions, it's just the injuries. But they're now playing a Chicago team really have nothing to play for. If they had shown improvement against Minnesota after the embarrassing effort in San Francisco, I might have felt differently about this game. Although I don't know that I still would have given the Bears much of a chance to win, to pull the upset or even cover. What's their motivation in this game? And now we're starting to see some of the bad habits out of Caleb Williams that we saw early in the season that a lot of people were concerned about.
Yeah, and they're
even before he was drafted.
They're making a lot of mistakes, like mental mistakes, like the guy who didn't report, who played played fullback on that one play where they scored a touchdown. I think that play doesn't happen if they have a real head coach. Although, I mean, it did happen on the Lions, but still, like that's something that it's a mistake made by an interim head coach with no coordinator. So you see a lot of this stuff. Like they went for a 4th down, they failed both times. The strip sack, like a lot of blunders here for the Bears, and I think that will continue.
With the Bears, teams like that, if you want to do what Dan Campbell did in the second quarter and go for it on your own 31, what do they got to lose? I mean, people say, well, the integrity of the game and all that. Well, the integrity of the game, I mean, that's a joke coming from the NFL. I mean, you got nothing to lose, and, so go for it in situations where maybe normally you wouldn't. So I could see the Bears doing that. That doesn't mean they're going to be successful. But I really have to wonder about the level of intensity in the fourth quarter if the game happens to be close.
Yeah, exactly. So I like the
Plus,
Lions.
By the way, Campbell's style is to go all out in every game.
Yeah, I like the Lions quite a bit. I sense that you do too.
Won't play the game. If I had to play the game, the Lions or nothing. Lions would be another team to consider as a teaser partner for Cincinnati.
Okay. Fantasy question about Moore, Metcalf, Downs, or McMillan. He needs 2. Moore I would definitely use. As for the other 3, Metcalf is not healthy. That's an issue. Plus, there's going to be rain in Seattle. Downs, I like Downs, but with Richardson, it's hard to play him. And McMillan, he's been coming on, but he's a rookie, so it's tough to trust. I think I'd go Downs, but it's a tough one. It's pretty tough. Metcalf could really bounce back at any point, but
I'd probably go Moore and McMillan, especially with the rookie looking to hey, I'm having a good season. Let's get me. He's not going to be a candidate for Rookie of the Year, but he could have a good game.
Yeah, Campbell's motivation. Yeah, I agree with John here. I think they're going to go all out. So, all right, let's get to the next game.
By the way, the only concern about Detroit, again, an indoor team. It was Detroit the team that only played 2 outdoor games all year?
Yeah, and I was looking at the weather
At Green Bay and Chicago.
Yeah, I really don't worry about the weather. It says partly cloudy.
And by the way, without Montgomery now, that means more of a workload for Gibbs.
Yeah, which I love Gibbs this week in fantasy, but I'm sure everyone does. Partly cloudy, 31 degrees. There's no rain or anything. Wind 10 miles an hour, so no.
Yeah, but when you're used to playing in 72 degrees, 31 is Bears can play poorly in any weather, but they're at least used to the 31 degrees. In fact, at this time of the year, that might actually be a warm temperature for them.
Yeah,
but the winds could be a factor off the lake.
It's only 10 miles an hour wind. It's not. I don't think it's going to be that bad. 31 degrees. It's not like it's 10 or something. No. I don't know. Like these guys live in the cold. Like even though they don't play in the cold, they live in the cold. So it's not. I don't know. It's not like a Miami team.
No, I'm not trying to make a case against the Lions. I'm just saying it's another factor to consider that might explain if there's an unusual result in this game. That possibly that's part of it. But I mean, if you go on situation, if you go on talent, if you look on both teams coming off losses, it's a little bit more disturbing for Detroit than it is for Chicago. Everything points to Detroit in this game.
Yeah, and as John
points out, I can't make it an outstanding play.
As John points out, no precipitation for Goff's tiny hands. So that's the key there. No rain, no wind. We're good. All right. So Cardinals at the Panthers. This line went to 4.5 from 4.
Understandably.
Yes. So this is another team that has illnesses. The Panthers have 2 illnesses, Clowney and Robert Hunt. So 2 is not going to raise a red flag for me. I did notice it, though. So that's something to watch out for. The only downside for the Cardinals here is Paris Johnson, DNP twice. He's been their best lineman this year. So if he's out, that's going to make the offense a little bit worse. But the Panthers have such a bad defense, it may not matter. Plus, it's not a cluster injury, so I wouldn't really be too worried about it. I like the Cardinals here. So something you mentioned, it was probably a few weeks ago, where you were breaking down teams. You're like, I have these teams.
Yeah, I've got that information here. That's one of the reasons why I also like the Cardinals quite a bit. I think I know where you're.
Well, you want to go ahead? What information?
Well, it may be something different than what you have, but it probably is along the same lines. Cardinals are 7-7, but all 7 losses for the Cardinals were to A, teams with winning records at this time, and B, all of those teams. It's actually 6 teams because they played Seattle twice. All of those teams are currently holding playoff positions with a combined record of 70-28. Those are the teams that Arizona has lost to. Their wins are against teams that are combined 39-59. In terms of quality losses, the Cardinals have one of the top opponents' winning percentage of teams that they've lost to. Carolina is more in line with the quality of teams that the Cardinals have defeated for their 7 wins. The average team that Cardinals have beaten this year, the 7 teams, is 5.5 and 8.5. So basically, 5, 6 and 8 or 5 and 9. Okay, Cardinals are just 3-11. Carolina's just 3-11. After dropping 3 straight, Arizona won comfortably over New England last week, who's also 3-11. And despite being swept by Seattle, Cardinals still have a shot at the playoffs. Against the Patriots, the Cardinals were able to both run and pass with great success, whereas in Carolina's loss to Dallas, the Panthers lost 4 turnovers to a Dallas defense that had only forced 15 turnovers in its previous 13 games. Arizona's been toughened up in losses to better teams that they faced, and with a huge drop in class for a second week after facing New England, their confidence is back as they face a foe whose recent positive momentum, I'm talking Carolina, appears to have been very short-term. And that's it. I'm not hearing you.
Okay, I was on mute for a second.
Okay.
This is all in your logicalapproach.com newsletter.
Yeah.
The logicalapproach.com.
I was reading it, but I was trying not to sound monotonic.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
Somewhat succeeded.
I would urge you guys to sign up for Andy's newsletter at thelogicalapproach.com.
I keep threatening to update that website, but it's almost done. It should be done by late afternoon Saturday at the latest.
Okay.
Hopefully
Yeah.
sooner.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, sign up for Andy's newsletter. I agree with what you wrote. So I got the motivation from you to do this because you classify teams as like great or good. I forget what you said, like good, mediocre, or bad, right?
Yeah, ABC basically.
Yeah, ABC. So like I expanded a little bit. I went A through F. I did the whole school grading system.
I'm
So
sorry, A through what? A through F?
A through F. Yes, I did the whole school grading system. Whereas like the A are like the elite teams, the F are the horrible teams, and then B are good, C are mediocre, D are just bad but not horrible. So
but no E in there though.
No E, no E.
A B C D F. Okay.
And no I for incomplete either. So I did this.
By the way, as an aside, what do you think about the Jets and their inability to trade for Judy? Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, they were talking a trade, I think, in the offseason, and Woody Johnson, the owner, nixed the conversation to trade for the receiver because of his Madden rating.
Really?
Yes.
It's not like
I saw that story was on several websites today.
That's not. That sounds like something.
So that sounds like the Jets are probably a G.
What? Yeah, that's that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. Yeah. Or like I said, I for incomplete. That's a Z minus. I don't know. That's terrible. I don't. This Madden rating.
I think it may have had to do with like his ability to focus or something like that caused it. But whatever it is, it's still, you got a chance to get a very gifted receiver going up with a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think unless the price would be too high, you at least explore it.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe.
The Jets did explore it, but Woody said no.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so to kind of like piggyback on what you said here, before last week, the Cardinals hadn't even played any team below Group C. That was their easiest matchup of the year, and this one is either their easiest or their second easiest, depends on how you rank Carolina and New England in comparison to one another. They both have the same number of wins, so it's tough to say which one team is better than the other. Carolina, their close games were against teams that were not interested in them. They just like the Eagles didn't focus. The Buccaneers, same thing. Chiefs, the same thing. The Cardinals will because they have to win out here. So they're like it's not as great of a spot as it was last week because they're not coming off a loss. But still, they're 7-7. They're behind the 8 ball. They know they have to win out. So I think we see Arizona's best effort here. I love the matchups. James Conner should run all over the Panthers. The Panthers can't stop tight ends either. Trey McBride should have a great game. I love Arizona here. I was glad to see that you had them in your newsletter.
I played them, and if someone moves that line down to 4, I'll probably play them again.
Is grandkids holding that? Was that part of the story?
Oh, Woody. It must be for Woody, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, maybe his great-grandkids who are still in bassinets. If he has them, I don't know.
That's crazy. Yeah, he needs to be ambassador again. He can't come quickly enough for the Jets. I don't. Was that from Diana Marie Rossini? Do you know who broke that story? Was it her?
I don't believe so. I think I heard someone else get credit for that, or at least bring it up.
Okay. All right. Anyway, let's get to the next game. We have.
By the way, the bottom line is it's believable because it's the Jets.
That's true. It's like most franchises would be like, that's stupid. Like, but yeah, with the Jets, you kind of can't believe it. All right, so we have Eagles at the Redskins. This line has gone down. Oh, it's still 3.5. Sorry, it's still 3.5. The only piece of injury news I have here is something I mentioned earlier. Saquon Barkley practiced fully on Thursday, so there's some concern from Kenny on yesterday's fantasy rundown show about Barkley playing maybe limited, but the fact that he practiced fully on Thursday is a really good sign. As something else I mentioned earlier is that the Eagles have motivation here, even though they have a great record, much better record than the Redskins do. They can win the division. They could clinch the division with the win here, and players tend to get up for that. So I think the Eagles will.
It's like actually goal number 1 of a team is win. Maybe it's goal number 2. Goal number one is make the playoffs. Goal number two is do so by winning the division.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I'm not saying that. Not saying in terms of importance. I'm talking about in terms of sequencing.
Yeah, you always hear that. You always hear the players say, "Step one, winning division." You know, they always
Yeah.
say that. So anytime the players can get up for something like this, they do it. So yeah,
Let's
even
put it
though
this
the
way:
Eagles-
you don't celebrate when the Eagles. I don't think celebrated when they clinched a playoff spot. They will
Right.
celebrate a little bit when they clinch the division because number
Exactly.
one, it means a home game.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah, no, they'll be up for this one, even though they already beat Washington. Sometimes when a team beats another one, especially in a blowout fashion, they might be a little flat the second time because they already crushed the team. But given that they can win the division here, I think they'll be up for Washington. And the Eagles really do well against scrambling quarterbacks. They limited Jane Daniels the first time. They limited Lamar Jackson a few weeks ago. They'll be able to do the same thing with Daniels again here. So I like the Eagles quite a bit here. You know, -3.5 is not ideal, but I am considering them for my contest plays. What are your thoughts on this game?
I like the Eagles quite a bit, and I think it's sort of similar to Arizona. In fact, I took a look at Washington. Washington is 9-5. That's really a good record, but their early win at Arizona is the only win over a team without a losing record.
Yeah.
Cardinals are 7-7. Otherwise, Washington's come against teams that are 35-82 versus the rest of the NFL, other than against the Commanders. On a yards per play basis, no team has shown more of a decline from games 1 through 7 versus 8 through 14 than the Commanders. Drop of 0.79 yards per play as far as that goes, which is the offense. And we've seen Daniels not have the kind of games over the last month or so that he did early in the year. Philly has actually increased, but it's been ever so slightly. So they've basically been very consistent. I mentioned earlier when we sort of had an aside to this game about the great increase that they've had on the ground in their running yards from 166, which is good enough to lead the league in most years, even though it's for first 7 games, to 207 in the game since then. Washington still has an excellent chance to make the playoffs, as even one win over Atlanta or at Dallas to close the season would get them at least 10 wins, which normally you would think, and I think this year too, would be enough to make a wild card. And again, as you brought up and we sort of touched upon a little bit earlier, this is an important game to Philadelphia to clinch the division. They have a shot now, which we didn't think they would have, at the number 1 seed. And also, you know, as far as the issue last week with Graham's comments and the thing with Hurts and Brown, that was extinguished early in last week's win, and you saw it with the touchdown celebration, etc. Barkley was banged up, but he did return later in the game. And the other thought I had here is go back to last year when they opened 10-1 and finished 1-5, and then were an easy early out to Tampa Bay in the playoffs. That's been a mission of this team this year, and I think a comfortable win over a division rival, where even the division rival doesn't need to win because they'll still have 2 more chances at getting that 10th win. I think the Eagles, would it surprise me if Washington wins? No, it's the NFL. But if these teams play according to the way that one would expect them to play, the Eagles, it's almost like the Lions against the Bears, where you should have a totally different degree of intensity. I think Washington will be intense, but if both of these teams would play with the same intensity, and I'm talking about in a game where intensity would normally be a big factor, Philadelphia just has the better talent.
Yeah, absolutely. The Redskins have only played 3 teams above Group C this year.
There you go.
The Eagles, they lost by 8, and that the game was not nearly as close. The Ravens win by 7, and again, the Washington scored a touchdown late. It was actually 14.
Yeah, I think to get them a push.
Yes, and then the other game was the Steelers 28, Redskins 27. So 0-3 straight up.
Well, the game against the Steelers was a little bit more indicative of a close game because if I recall, didn't the Steelers have to come from behind to win that one in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, the Redskins led by 3 at halftime, and they led by 6 after the third quarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Steelers came back. They did that touchdown pass to Mike Williams.
But that also was when they were playing well, Washington, Daniels, etc.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, 0-2-1 against the spread against Group A and Group B teams. So
the only concern is that defensively, Washington has shown decent improvement over the last 7 games compared to the first 7 games. But then again, the Eagles' defense has also shown great improvement. And again, the decline in Washington's offense offsets the improvement on the defense.
Yeah, agreed. Just the story was by Zach Rosenblatt, Diana Marie Rossini, and Michael Silver. Diana, Emmett Smith's ex-girlfriend, and then Michael Silver is he does not like me. He blocked me on Twitter. I don't even know why he blocked me on Twitter. I was like, I saw like
now, my question, by the way, is: has anyone from the Jets organization refuted the story? That I haven't heard. Maybe one of our listeners, our viewers, has heard, but I've not heard anything that the Jets said. Oh, it had to have been a joke or something.
Yeah, well, I'm just hearing it for the first time now, so I don't know. But yeah, maybe someone's heard something.
I could believe it because it's typical Jets.
Yeah, I know. All right, so Jets. Speaking of New York teams, Giants at the Falcons. So this line was Falcons -10, and then the news broke that Kirk Cousins would be benched in favor of Michael Penix Jr. And so this line fell to 9, and then now 8.5. And then there's some injuries for the Giants too. Brian Burns and Bobby Okereke, DNP twice. Brian Burns, obviously the big one. Okereke is a really good linebacker, but Burns, he's such a great pass rusher, and if he's out, then that's suddenly going to be an issue. So for me, when I saw 10 and Cousins was going to start, I like the Giants a lot. You know, even though the Giants are terrible, the Falcons are also bad too. This is Group F at Group D, well,
I'm sorry. What'd you say? The Falcons were Group D as in David.
D as in David, yeah.
Okay.
They're just, at least recently, they've been so bad. At least with Cousins being injured, that was the big factor. They were, I would say, Group C early in the season. Group D after Cousins got hurt, it aggravated his Achilles. But with Michael Penix, that changes the equation here because Atlanta could be better. Now, we don't know. We don't know how Penix is going to play, but he can't be worse.
I have to think his teammates, who probably thought the change should have been made a couple of weeks ago, have to be excited and will play harder to justify the decision and basically stick it to the coach and say, why didn't you do this 3 weeks ago? Keep in mind, of course, they still have a tiebreaker edge over Tampa Bay, who they trail by 1 game because they beat them twice.
Yes, it's absolutely correct. I think that this quarterback change could really spark the Falcons, and they could have just this great effort against the Giants team. Where like normally, again, if this is Cousins, I think the Falcons will win by like 3 to 6 points or 7 points. But Penix could really energize them here, and the Giants are awful. I mean, they're starting Drew Lock again, which I guess is the best option, but I think it's kind of this quarterback change kind of ruined, I think, what was a really good play for the Giants. And so I'm going to be on Atlanta here. I think I'm going to make the change on the site because I currently have Giants, but I will be on Atlanta. But I can't bring myself to bet -8.5 on a quarterback we haven't seen yet. So where do you fall in this game? Do you like either side?
No, I don't. I'm trying to remember what I put in the newsletter because I classify my selections into 4 categories: game of the week, which is my top selection; featured games, which are 3 selections; and then it's best of the rest, which I consider really opinions, meaning that they're somewhat playable; and then the rest, which are basically leans. And I had to not quite flip a coin and make a decision on the game if someone who wants to play it on the game, maybe they're a fan, maybe they're watching the game. And at the time the line was 9, and I did have Atlanta over the Giants, but at no time did I consider playing this game. And you mentioned where they are. They used to be a C and now they're a D. Now they could win the division. Right now they are 7-7. Tampa Bay is 8-6. Now this is not a very good measure overall, but it is indicative. Your point differential. Tampa Bay, who's in first place, plus 77 points on the season. Now we're talking, 14 games. So you're talking about 5 points per game, 6 points per game, 5.5 points per game. Okay, more than they allow. Atlanta minus 49 points. I'm sorry, minus 49 points for a team that is 7-7. And just to put that in context, let me just because I think Arizona is also 7-7. Well, they're plus 8. You'd expect that of a 500 team. You would not expect the 500 team to be minus 49, which is about 3.5 points per game allowed more than you scored. So in other words, when they win close, and when they lose, they lose by bigger margins. I did not get to see the Chicago-Minnesota game last week. I did, however, get to see in person the Atlanta Raiders game, and Atlanta was every bit as bad as they looked, and the Raiders still couldn't take advantage. I'm sure you may have been switching between the two, but I don't know if you watched any of the Atlanta Raiders game.
Yeah, I was switching back and forth.
Okay, because it took the Raiders the entire game, and they never figured out that every other play was going to be a little toss to Robinson, and he's going to run around the right side, and he's going to pick up 6 to 10 yards. It took them all game. And then on the other hand, when the Raiders had the ball, the first punt of the game from the Atlanta punter, I think, was from about their own 46-yard line, I think, and went into the end zone. So what did they do the second time? They were almost in the same position, and they had a punt. Well, they took a 5-yard delay of game penalty, which makes sense because you'd like to pin the opponent inside, certainly in the 20, but probably from that position inside the 10 or inside the 5. So they pinned him inside the 5. So I said to my buddy next to me, who were at the game, I said, Raiders are going to run up the first play from their own 4-yard line, and they're going to lose a yard. They're going to run the same play the second time, and they're going to lose a yard, and then they're going to get hit for a safety. I was almost exact. They lost 1 yard on the first play. They lost 2 yards, not 1 yard on the second play. So now it's 3rd and 13 from the 1-yard line. Sack. Back in the end zone, of course. So, I mean, the play calling for the Raiders, the Raiders did everything they possibly could to help Atlanta win the game, which they did. In fact, I think the Raiders actually didn't hit over 100 yards until the middle of the fourth quarter, and Atlanta wasn't much better. Now, the Raiders ended up having 200-something yards because of garbage time, and Atlanta didn't outgain them by much. But, yeah, this is a bad Atlanta team, and I remember at the start of the season, I don't remember what I was doing with you, but I think we talked about it when you were out here to sign up for the contest. I could not understand the enthusiasm for Atlanta, and I played them under their season total. Now, they might hit it. Okay, I think it was 9, but they'll be very fortunate to do so.
I was not bullish on Atlanta either. I actually had them winning the division at 7-10.
I think you mentioned that, yes.
Yeah, I didn't like any of the teams in that division. So,
by the way, is Kyle Pitts still on the team?
I don't know where he went. It's so bizarre. They forgot about him. It's got like the Raiders on Monday night. Then they forgot about Jacoby Myers until the final 2 drives.
Yeah, I don't know how many catches Pitts had. When I looked at it, I think in the third he had only 1 for like 5 yards or something.
Yeah,
I think he had another one in the game, but I can check the stats.
They don't utilize him, and it was a good matchup too.
Yeah, well, he's a good matchup against most teams. You know, certainly. Yeah, only the Raiders would have their punt return. Yeah, that happened also, I think, on another punt when they took a delay penalty on purpose. And I don't know. Are you able to decline delay of game penalties? Someone told me yes.
Yeah, you can.
Why didn't the Raiders decline?
I don't know.
Knowing that there was a better chance that the ball was going to go in the end zone. Maybe because he thought that in case the guy got lucky, someone would call for a fair catch. And maybe that's the way that teams tank.
Or the head coach doesn't know the rules, which I feel like could be possible.
Yeah, no, but maybe that's the way the coach tanks. Give us a chance to get a punt in worse condition by not taking the 5-yard penalty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, by not declining the 5-yard penalty.
Right. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks not know the rules, i.e. McNabb not knowing that game's going to end in ties.
Overtimes,
I feel like if quarterbacks don't know the rules, there's a chance that a new head coach may not know the rules either. So there's always that possibility.
So I can't come up with any play in this game. I can't even. I suppose if the line drops a little more, you could consider Atlanta on a teaser. If it goes down a little bit more, I don't know that it will. But certainly if you can get them under a field goal.
Yeah.
Although it may not even be necessary because the Giants, what can they do? A third-string quarterback or a second-string quarterback, however you want to compare Locke to Tommy DeVito. Yeah. The Giants have shown absolutely nothing. You pointed it out, I think, the game against Tampa, they were a no-show. The game last week, they were barely a show. Well, they were really a no-show. And they were 16.5-point underdogs, and now they're laying barely half of that, a little bit more than half of that against a team that obviously not quite as good as Baltimore by any stretch of the imagination. But unlike the game against Baltimore, this one's on the road.
Yes,
And
right.
the Giants are probably thinking about, let's get home and enjoy a few days before Christmas. Atlanta's thinking of let's get a win and we will enjoy Christmas.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's tough to lay this many points with Penix, as I said, but yeah, that's where I would lean. Do I flex Ford, Miller, Brian Robinson? I assume that's Brian and not Bijan, and then Debo and PPR. Debo is playing hurt. He's not been 100% since October. I think it's Robinson is such a tough matchup. I think it's either Ford or Miller. John says Ford, so I think I'd go with Ford, but it's not a great matchup.
It's a toss up. I think either way, it's for those two.
Yes. All right. So Titans at the Colts. Injury wise, Titans have a bunch of players. They had like 8 players who missed practice twice so far, but none of them were that important except for Tony Pollard. There's also Kenneth Murray, but he stinks. There's Nick Westbrook-Akine. I know he's caught some touchdowns, but he's not very good either. So nothing really there on the injury report. I don't really know where to go with this game. I don't like either team. These are two teams I'd like to fade. I don't like Indianapolis as a -3.5. I don't like any like mediocre or bad team as -3.5 unless they're playing an awful team. That Tennessee, I don't know if they're awful because
where do you have Tennessee rated?
They're Group D, as in David.
And where do you have Colts? A C?
C, yeah. So that says the Colts should be favored by this many points, I suppose. I just like coming off that loss at Denver. How they played, they blew the game completely. If Taylor doesn't drop the ball at the 1 yard line,
did you say they or he?
Well,
I think it was more he. That's always a momentum changer.
It was, but then Pittman fumbled, and then you have that stupid play call where Adonai Mitchell threw a pick six, or it was a fumble technically, but still, like they made a lot of mistakes. Richardson missed downs for an easy completion, and then he threw an interception on the next play. Like so many mistakes, but it did all begin with Taylor dropping the ball at the 1 yard line. That was the tone setter. It could have been was it 27 or 26? I can't remember. But either way, like they would have been up big. And I think they would have covered at least maybe one outright.
I think it was. What was it? 13.
It was
13-7 at that time, or 13-6 at the time.
Yeah.
Because briefly on one of the apps I use, it showed 19-6 while the play was being under reviewed because they had originally called it a touchdown, I believe.
Yeah. So I was when that happened, I saw it live, and I was like, "Oh man, they're gonna call us back." I'm like, "Please don't see it, please don't see it." And then they took like 2 minutes during the extra point try. I'm like, "Oh man, they saw it." And then you heard the crowd cheer, the Denver crowd cheer. It's like so frustrating. Anyway, the Colts blew it. Do they bounce? I don't know how they bounce back from that. That's my question here. I don't really know how to handicap this game, so I'm just gonna pass on this one. But from reading your write-ups in the newsletter, I know you like one side here. So
yeah, well, Tennessee is 2-12, both straight up and against the spread, and in fact, the line has not mattered in any of their 14 games. If they've lost the game, they haven't covered. If they won the game, they have covered. Now, I'm sorry, there was one game where they beat New England laying 3.5 and they won by 3. So maybe some people did get it different there, but in all the other 13 games, the line has not mattered. One of those games was their home game in, I think it was week 5 or 6 against Indianapolis. They were favored by 2.5 and they lost 20-17. So that was one of the games that they actually, again, another one that they were competitive in, but they still didn't cover because they were favored. So Tennessee is 2-12 against the spread this year. Colts are 1-5 ATS in their last 6 games, so something's got to give here. Running back Taylor, as I mentioned before, that negated would have been a touchdown to extend the lead to a 2-score game, and it was all downhill. Now 6-8 Indy. Lost a chance at evening their record. They still have an ability to make the playoffs, as we talked about a little earlier. They did win 20-17. They outgained the Titans by a small amount in that first game. They do have winnable games at the Giants and against the Jaguars the next 2 weeks to end the season, but they do need help. Tennessee, I think, is much thrown it in. They scored some touchdowns last week, I think, when they were way behind the Bengals to lose only by 10, yet still not cover. Colts don't win pretty, and in fact, only 2 of their 3 wins have been more than a field goal this year, which they need to win by 4 or more. 1 by 6 over Miami and 5 over Chicago earlier in the season. But that explains the short line here. Tennessee 3-11. 9 of their 11 games have been lost by 7 points or more. 7 of the 11 by double digits. So Rudolph will start in place of Levis again this week. Perhaps, I said before, in a trial to see if he can earn the job next season. I think the Titans are playing for the future. I think the Colts are playing for now. And I think Indianapolis has enough, certainly with the running game, certainly with the receivers. Tennessee has some great stats. It's, yards per game, really nice. I think they're top 4 or top 5. But they make other mistakes like turnovers or, not taking advantage of other teams' turnovers when they get the ball back. A very inefficient team. So I do like the Colts here. I think they will be playing hard, and I think they do have enough of an advantage to be able to take advantage of Tennessee. Again, if it comes down to the fourth quarter when everybody is tired and it's a tight game, you'll get the better effort out of the Colts.
Yeah.
Especially because the earlier win was at Tennessee. Now they're getting them at home.
Those pretty stats were in garbage time. So, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
The stats look misleading, I think, for Tennessee. Whereas, like, if it's a close game, they'll probably find some way to throw some interceptions or something.
Yeah.
But I think Tennessee has had the one defense I'll have for Tennessee is that they've only played 3 teams in Group D or F this year. It's been a very tough schedule for them. Now, this is not a Group D or F team, so I don't know if that means much, but I still think that, like, if they had an easier schedule, if they had like 5 or 6 teams in Group D or F, then their record would look a little bit better. By the way, those Group D and F teams, they are 2-1 against them. They beat the Dolphins when the Dolphins had their backup quarterback. They beat the Patriots, and they lost to the Jaguars when Will Levis got.
Where do you have the Colts? C?
C, yeah.
Okay. How have they done against C teams?
Against
Tennessee.
C teams this year, they played 5 C teams. They lost to the Bears in Week 1, which, as you might remember, that
fluky loss.
Yeah, very fluky. 17-0 lead. Bears scored no offensive touchdowns. They still won. Then they lose to the Jets 24-17. They lose to the Colts 20-17, as you pointed out.
That's one that they covered. They did not. Oh, they didn't cover because they were favored by 2.5 in that one.
Yes, they beat the Texans 32-27, and then they lose to the Bengals 37-27.
Yeah.
So
and then now you have the Bengals rated as the Bengals rated as a C team.
Yeah.
I think because of their defense.
The worst defense in the NFL. So
because overall on talent, they're probably a B team this year.
I think they have an A+ offense, F- defense. You average them together, I think you get a C.
C, yeah.
Yeah. So
they have a couple of close losses in there. I mean, they obviously count, but I mean, it's not as though they were a C team. Well, okay. I would say a C team is probably a team that's been outscored on the season. And the Bengals are actually plus 12 on the season with a losing record. So, they've lost a lot of the close games they've lost. And to be fair to your point, they had the lead in a lot of those games and couldn't hold in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. By the way, the Bengals have had an easier schedule. They played 7 teams in Group D or F this year.
Yeah. What's their record in those games?
They are 6-1. The only loss was to the Patriots in Week 1, where they showed up front.
Okay, yeah. So Cincinnati. See, if a team has that kind of record against the D's and the F's, I'd probably put them. I don't know that I could put them in the B category, but maybe C+, B-.
See, I have Ravens in B, and they were both close games, but the Ravens beat them twice. I trust the Ravens more than them.
Yeah. I have a little trouble. I would say that the Ravens, and again, you may be using numbers as opposed to eye test or whatever. I would rate the Ravens and the Bengals not that far apart if you look at offense. If you look at defense, I would rate the Ravens better defense, but not by the same gap or the same margin that they would have had, say, last year or years in the past.
Yeah.
Now the defensive gap between the Ravens and Bengals has narrowed, but the Bengals are much worse than last year, and the Ravens are somewhat worse than last year, and
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of improvement lately, but that's where I would end up having. I could understand the Ravens being rated B because of that pass defense. Although, and again, you probably have, I think in some of the websites, the pass defense has been bad, but how has that been in games when they've been up by, say, 10 points or more versus garbage time for either them or, let's say, for example, the Dallas Cowboys when Baltimore's up 28-6 entering the fourth quarter and end up winning 28-25 or something, 28-26.
In my evaluations, I always exclude garbage time. I don't.
Yeah.
I factor that out immediately. So it is pretty bad. And by the way, you talk about if you wonder how, if you want to include the Bengals as a Group B team, how they've done against B teams this year, 0-6.
What are they against the spread?
Let's see, 1-1, 2-2, 2-3, 2-4 against the spread.
Okay, all right, then I won't give them a B minus. Let's say C plus.
Yeah, I think they're probably the best of the C teams. I think.
Yeah.
Who
are in your C group? Who's in your C group?
Okay. Let's see here. I don't have like the.
Where have you got the Commanders?
B.
Okay. Where have you got the Cardinals?
C.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will have the full list next week. Someone asked me on Twitter if I could group them on the website in my power rankings. I will do that. And funny enough, the Bengals have not played any Group C teams this year. So it's either been Group B or Group D for the most part for them. Let's see.
What did you say? They're 0-6 against B teams, 2-4 against the spread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Their covers with the second game against Baltimore and the game against Kansas City.
Okay, two pretty good teams, by the way, but nonetheless,
yeah.
What's that?
But not elite.
By the way, where do you have Kansas City? You still have them as an A?
No, I have them B.
B.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only I have four teams in A. I have Eagles, Lions, Bills, and Packers.
Oh, so you have the Vikings as a
B, yeah.
B team, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, again, I think I think their scoring differential is not very good. What did I say? Minus? Did I say minus? Let me see here.
With the Vikings, you mean?
Yeah. What their differential is, because I think Vikings are plus 117 in scoring.
Yeah. A lot of that though was with Christian Darrisaw. Ever since Darrisaw went down, their offense has not been nearly as good. They haven't played a single team above Group C ever since Darrisaw went down. That changes this week, so we'll get to that game in a little bit. Has Latu done anything this year? So he's actually second in pressures on the Colts, which I guess may not be saying much. He has 4 sacks, not a great number, but second in pressures.
Doesn't have great support amongst his defensive teammates.
Yeah, he's been pretty decent. Like not great, but not bad. So I like his potential. Quarterback first start is an 8.5-point favorite. I know the Giants and the QB are pathetic, but please, I get it. I just think the Falcons.
They're below pathetic.
Yeah, that's true. They are tanking. Like
they could lose to half the teams in the SEC.
They are intentionally tanking,
or at least give them a good game.
They made that known that they were tanking because they benched their quarterback, and then the players came out and were angry about it. Like we know they're tanking, so I don't trust them to hang around here. So. It's
because if anything, you keep Daniel Jones and maybe he does well, and someone will be interested in their trade, and you get something for him.
Yeah, if Daniel Jones starts, I think they might beat the Saints. They might have beaten Dallas on Thanksgiving. Like suddenly they'd have 4 wins, and they wouldn't be able to get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. No. And so it's the right move. Like, these games don't mean anything. You don't want to be like the Jets in 2020 and win yourself out of Trevor Lawrence and have to draft Zach Wilson. Like that was a disaster. So
although drafting Trevor Lawrence hasn't exactly worked out all that well for the Jags. He got him to the playoffs, but
but better than Zach Wilson. That was horrible. All right. So speaking of the Jets, Rams and Jets here. Injury wise, let's see. I have Michael Carter and Quinnen Williams DNP twice. Quinnen Williams being the big one. And the Jets were already very poor defensively. We talked about how Ulbrich, being the interim head coach, kind of ruined things for them. So the Jets have had a couple of nice games recently against the Dolphins, and then they almost won that game. They beat the Jaguars, but the fact that they almost lost to the Jaguars, I think speaks volumes. Like, I wouldn't be too excited about that. The Rams are a much better.
Yeah, they had a late lead, and the Jaguars caught them, and of course the Jets ended up going and covering the spread with a touchdown at the end of the game, which says something about both of these teams.
Yeah. Luckily enough, the Jaguars had 3 timeouts, so the Jets had to go for the touchdown. They couldn't just kneel down. So that was key. As you know, we spent about a half hour on that game last week, the Jets. So I was happy they covered because I had that in both of my contests. I had a big play on it. So a little lucky to get the win, the cover, and not the push because the Jaguars were smart with the timeouts. But anyway, the Rams are a much better team. Like, this is a huge step up in class for the Jets. B team at C team.
I'm wondering how much of this short line is related to the weather and the travel for the Rams. The cold.
Yeah. So in addition to the weather and the travel, they also have, this is a tough spot for them because they're coming off a huge win against the Bills, and then a big upset, not like a big upset, but like, a monumental upset over the Niners, a team that has had their number. And so they swept them on the road. Just like 2 huge wins here for them. And that now suddenly they're playing against this inferior non-conference team. I wonder if that's going to affect them. The weather is 26 degrees, not very windy, sunny. I don't think the weather is a huge deal, but travel, I don't think it's a big deal either. McVay has done very well in East Coast 1:00 games. He's 9-5 against the spread in those games. So that stuff doesn't bother me. It's coming off those 2 huge wins and maybe being flat here against the Jets. That's my concern here. Otherwise, I would love the Rams in the spot, but I don't know if I can quite get to them. But I don't want to take the Jets either. So what are your thoughts on this game?
I don't know that I will play it, but the only side I can now consider in this game would be the Rams for a number of reasons. I'm going to compare the Jets to another team that had been playing well and then lost at home last week, and that's the Panthers. They had just played 3 good games. Yep. I know that Philadelphia was one of them. Kansas City was one of them. I forget who the third team was. Tampa. And then finally they ran out. What's that?
Tampa,
yeah, okay. They lost them, but they were all competitive games, and then now they're playing well, and people are on them. They've been on the Panthers all year, and they finally cashed a few tickets with them. And then now they're favored against Dallas, and they throw in a clunker when a lot of people were expecting them to say, hey, here's a team that's playing hard. But yeah, you do have the Rams coming off of, those big wins. You have the Jets coming off of those 2 good efforts, the loss to Miami in overtime, and then the win that avoided overtime last week. And I wonder if that's not going to be like the Panthers, where, okay, these bad teams only have so many good games that they can play consecutively, and then it falls apart. Now, you have the Rams, who, remember, went on that 6-1 stretch at the end of last year. So they know that they can do it because they just did it last year after a weak start. And now they've got, what are they? They are, they are tied with Seattle, I believe, now.
Yeah, and they have the tiebreaker.
And I think that was the team that I think I messed up on before as far as the final 2 games. They are the ones who play Arizona and Seattle to end the season. So they have an opportunity to win the division by winning out. And if you're laying 3 points, if it's a competitive game, maybe it comes down to, the 3 points. But if you're the better team and you're playing with urgency against the teams that, has already shown that, okay, we can play a little bit, but maybe we can't do it 3 weeks in a row. Again, I have to take a look that the Rams are not going to be content, sitting in the middle of the fourth quarter with a 3-point lead. They're going to look to do as much as they can to extend that lead. And ideally, they'd like to be in the game where, they're up by 10 points with, or more, with 5 minutes to go in the game. So don't know that I will play. Whereas I said I couldn't consider a play, for example, on the Giants Atlanta game and 1 or 2 of the others. I can't consider a play on the Rams.
Okay. Yeah, I can't either. So which is a shame because I like the matchups here, but the situational is just not very good for them.
Well, again, I'll take McVay as a coach against most of the coaches in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a colossal coaching advantage for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we go to the late afternoon games. We have Vikings at the Seahawks. So the big news, Geno Smith left the game last Sunday night with a knee injury, but he's practiced fully twice. So great news for Seattle. For Minnesota, Harrison Smith was downgraded from limited to DNP. So a concern here for Minnesota. I like Seattle a lot here, so I think some people might be skittish to take Seattle here, especially after Seattle failed to cover the same line against the Packers. Actually, the Vikings are favored by a half point more than the Packers were, but so I don't think it's warranted. I brought up Christian Darrisaw, and I said that the Vikings had not played a team above Group C without Darrisaw. This is the first time they'll be doing so. I have Seattle in Group B. They have really good defense. They have great offensive weapons. Geno Smith's played well for the most part this year. The only issue really for Seattle.
What was the score when he got injured last week?
Well, the Packers were winning comfortably. I remember.
Yeah.
I don't think it was. Yeah, I like, but the Packers I feel like are better than the Vikings.
Packers are much. I think despite the records, I think Green Bay's a better team than Minnesota.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think this is a much easier game for Seattle. And plus Darnold might be injured. Like he banged his hand twice. You said you didn't get to watch that Monday night game against the Bears.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold banged his hand twice on a helmet in that game. It happened the first time he was a little wonky, and then it happened again a little bit later. So his throws are off. Even the Buck and Aikman were talking about how Darnold is just off in that game. Now it could heal. It's 6 days later, but still that is a slight concern. If you're going to take Minnesota, you have to be worried about that too. So I like Seattle a lot here. So what are your thoughts on this game?
No, I'm with you. I think that was, if I remember, the game that I think that might have been the game that I liked the most that I wrote up this week.
Yep, I think it was.
I said both teams atop their divisions. Vikings are tied with the 12-2 Lions. Yeah, they are now playing for the number one seed, and if they and Detroit win out. Well, I think Detroit gets it because their losses were to Buffalo and Tampa. But if they all win, well, they can't all win out because Minnesota and Detroit play each other. Minnesota's games were to I know Philadelphia lost to Tampa and Atlanta, and I forget who Minnesota's other loss was to.
They lost to the Rams
and Detroit. Okay,
and
Detroit earlier. Yeah, when they had a lead most of the game in that one also, and then Detroit came from behind. No, the numbers I think could put you on Minnesota in this game. This is Seattle's last home game. They do finish up. I think we've talked about Chicago and I think was it the Rams? I think the Rams. I think at the end of the season because I know that Arizona plays. I think Seattle next week.
Yeah, it's Bears.
Yeah, so I do like. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do like Seattle in this game. And I think they can win. I've got a money line play on them. Let me put it that way.
Nice. I would even consider the -2.5, which I like as well.
The what now? What? Oh, you mean
the alt line minus?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right. So we get to the next game here. This was flexed to 425. Not sure why. Patriots at the Bills. This line is Bills -14. So
maybe because it's Buffalo.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It feels like unnecessary, but I mean, really, the marquee game was Niners.
I could have made Washington, Philadelphia for a late game.
Yeah, that would be better.
Because remember, if they're flexing these games, that means they're making the decision late in the season, and it was easy to see that Washington was going to be a much better team. By the time that they flexed this game, and they knew that. New England was not going to be a very good team, and they'd like to have a more competitive game, which was surprising that they chose this one.
Yeah, the 14-point favorite is kind of strange, but I guess people might just want to watch the Bills. Josh Allen's the MVP.
Yeah.
So the Bills had issues in the secondary last week. Rasul Douglas, Damar Hamlin, and Taylor Rapp were all out. All three of them were limited in practice both games. I like the Bills here. So it's not a great spot because they're coming off that win against the Lions, and you kind of wonder like maybe they'll be a little flat. But I think they had their flat game against the Rams. I don't think that's going to happen again so soon. Plus, this is a divisional game that hasn't happened yet. It's against a rookie who is chosen number 3 overall. So I think they may want to impose their will on him. And plus, you have a really, really smart defensive coach against a rookie quarterback. I think that's a big advantage for Buffalo as well. The Patriots have not competed well against these top teams. For example, they went into Miami a few weeks ago. They lost by a large margin. Now they play better against these lesser teams like the Colts. They almost beat the Colts, but when they have this big step up in competition, they usually just fall flat. I think that's going to happen here. There could be backdoor cover, I suppose, but I think the Bills should be able to win this one comfortably. I would consider this for a small bet. I wouldn't have this in the contest, though. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Buffalo scored 30 points or more, I think, in like 9 or 10 straight games, something like that, including 42 2 weeks ago and 48 last week. I think those are the numbers. Just wonder at what point will they run out of gas as far as the offense goes and, sort of like settle for field goals instead of touchdowns. Although if you're scoring over 30 points, even field goals will add up to quite a bit if you're scoring that many possessions. If I had to play the game, it would be a play more against Buffalo than on New England, because I think New England is still playing hard, even though they're stepping up in class. What has New England done against the points? I think they've done okay. I think they're maybe about maybe a little bit. Well, they have covered. Let me see. They've covered 4 of the last 7, only 1 of their last 4. But they lost by, let's see, they lost by 6 at home to the Rams. They lost by 19 at Miami. They lost by 1 at home to the Colts, and then they lost by 13 last week. So, in all but one of those 4 games, they would have covered. So, if I were to play the game, and I'm not going to play this again, another one of those games that I really couldn't come up with a good reason to play Buffalo, even though I know that they're the better team. They are playing for the number 1 seed, so obviously they have motivation to win this game. And of course, by the time they play, they will know what Kansas City will have done against Houston the day before. So if I were to play it, I would have to take the points, especially if it went to 14.5. But I don't have to play it, and I won't.
The Patriots this year, they have not played any Group A teams yet. Obviously, they'll change this week. They've played only 3 Group B teams, so they've actually had an easy schedule despite the record. In the Group B games, they lose by 17 to the Niners. They lost by 6 to the Rams, which was that was a blowout that got close toward the end. And then they lost, as you said, by 19 to Miami. So. They have not stepped up well in competition. So, I mean, this is why I like the Buffalo quite a bit. Yeah. But like I said, they are.
I can understand the arguments more for Buffalo than I can for New England.
Yeah.
My argument is basically against Buffalo. But you know what? Because they've been on such a tear offensively. But then again, if you said it after the 3rd or 4th game, you would have been wrong. At least as far as the points scored, 5 or 6 times in a row since then. So
right, exactly. I think this could be a James Cook game. I think Josh Allen may not post insane numbers like he has the past couple of weeks. I think Cook could go nuts in this game.
Yeah, the only other thought again against Buffalo is they've played their last 2 or 3 games indoors.
Mm-hmm.
At the Rams and at Detroit, and now they're going out into the elements where New England's been playing there for a while.
Well, so, they did dominate the Niners in the snow, so I think they'll be fine. I mean, I feel like they can play anywhere, but yeah.
Well, anyway, I mean, they're probably. I would say right now they're the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, 100%. I think right now, if I had to pick a Super Bowl matchup, I think it's going to be Eagles Bills. I'm shocked, but still, that's what I think it'll be. All right, next game, Niners at the Dolphins. The line is a pick 'em. There are some Miami -1s out there, but mostly pick 'em. So we have a lot of injury stuff here. Trent Williams, DNP twice. They said they do not expect him to play. Nick Bosa downgraded. He was limited, then DNP. So he's going to need to practice on Friday for you to have any confidence in him playing. Isaac Orendo, you mentioned earlier, DNP twice, so it might be Patrick Taylor at running back. And for Miami, they were missing both their tackles last week, so it was cluster injuries there. Terran Armstead, DNP. He has not practiced all year, so I wouldn't count on him practicing. Maybe he returns. I don't know. Kendall Lamb was DNP limited, so maybe some optimism there. Jalen Waddle, DNP twice. So I really don't know what to make of this game. If Bosa,
by the way, where do you have the 49ers ranked or rated?
Group C.
Okay.
They've been very mediocre this year. They've looked impressive in some games. They've blown leads. It's a very average team. You know what it reminds me of is I don't know if you remember this, the 2003 Buccaneers, the year after they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They just, for the life of them, they could not have consistent success. Like it would be, I think they were win, loss, like the entire year. They're like after every win, they just had this huge letdown. Then they'd come back, have a nice win, then huge letdown. Like it happened the entire season for them. And this is how the Niners have played the entire year. They've had just so many injuries. If they were healthy, they would obviously be at least B, maybe A. But like they've just had so many injuries. And so if Williams and Bosa are out, I just don't know how you take them here. Especially given that they're practically eliminated from the playoffs. They need some insane things to happen for them to make the playoffs. They need the Seahawks and Rams to have a tie in Week 18 for them to do it. So,
can they be eliminated this week?
Yes. Well, in the early games,
yeah, with the early games is what I'm talking about. Now the late games, I guess it could be wild cards and all that, but I mean, the Sunday night game and the Monday night game should have no bearing on the 49ers.
So they can actually get the 7th seed, but they need the Falcons to lose to the Giants and the Panthers. So if the Falcons as 8.5-point favorites win at 1:00, they cannot get the 7th seed. So they would only be able to get the division at that point, and we know the Rams play at 1:00. So if the Rams win, then they cannot win the division. So
in other words, by the time, let's say that 49ers game gets to halftime, they may have been eliminated.
It could be, yeah. Could be, yes.
Although it's unlikely that. Did you say what the first one you said that Atlanta has to have 2 losses?
That's for the 7th seed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if Atlanta, for them to have the 7th seed, they need to win out. They need the Redskins to lose out, and they need Atlanta to lose out as well, because Atlanta could get the 7th.
Oh, okay. So they can win the division if the Rams lose. And they win out. And right. Seattle does something. Yeah.
They need the Rams and Seahawks to lose out and to tie in Week 18.
Okay.
And they need to win out. I think they're better off trying to get the 7th seed here, but Atlanta could foil that with the win. So
yeah.
Or Washington, I guess, could foil that with the win too, but that's more unlikely. Atlanta is almost likely to win.
Atlanta's that's probably in the 85 to 90 percentile of probability.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. They could be eliminated. I think there's a good chance they'll be eliminated by the time this game kicks off, because both the Rams and Falcons are favorites. So
I guess Miami. Well, no, Miami. I don't. Miami can still end up 9-8.
Yeah, Miami can win out. Yeah, Miami can win out and get in. Yeah.
Yeah, and the only team that could end up this weekend with more than 9 wins is Baltimore, because the Chargers and Broncos 9 wins and they've played. So Miami still has an opportunity to extend their season at least past this weekend.
Yeah, the Dolphins will still have something to play for.
Yeah, because if Denver and Chargers go 1-1 in their final 2 games, then all 3 of those teams seated sitting 4, 5, 6 in the wild card things in the AFC are gone.
Right. So
so Miami, I do like Miami in this game.
Okay.
The Dolphins, especially the offense and Tua, were due for a down game after playing fairly well since Tua came back. Remember, they lost the first 2 games against Arizona and Buffalo on late losses, but I think they put up 27 27 in both of those games. I think they then had a bad game. I forget where they only put 17 up a few weeks ago, and then They had they put up 26 against the Jets. They won it in overtime. But I was disappointed last week because I did like them against Houston. I know you had, I think, the Texans, and a lot of people did. But what did he have? A whole bunch. What did he have? 4 interceptions or something? Or
Yeah, 3.
3.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't totally surprised. I mean, obviously the game. Well, obviously Houston was favored and was on a field goal, so wouldn't be surprised. It was was surprised that maybe not. Well, I wasn't surprised that Tua had a rough game, but I was not surprised that that they didn't perform up to the way they had. So I think they can turn it back around here, at least for this week. I would expect Tua to have a better game. And again, all those injuries make it very, very difficult to make a case for San Francisco, especially, again, traveling across the country with a depleted roster.
Yeah, if you tell me Miami's going to have at least one of its tackles back, then I could get behind it. But my main argument for Houston last week was when I saw that Armstead and Lamb were both out against that edge rush. Like that just is like, okay, they're really going to struggle.
Yeah, Bosa's out for the 49ers.
Yeah, the Niners still have some pass rush, but still, like if they have one of their tackles back, I'm fine.
Well, Tua does have some mobility, so that's.
Yeah,
of course, he had it last week against Houston, but didn't get a chance to use it.
Yeah, so I don't really like Tua that much. The status of the tackles, as I said, Turn Armstead, DMP twice, but he has not practiced in months, so I don't know what to make of that. And then Kendall Lamb, DMP, and then limited. So that's a good sign that he might come back, but you never know. I've seen players go limited, and then just be out. So I don't really know. We'll know more.
By the way, who do you give the coaching advantage to in this game? That's a tough decision.
I hate Mike McDaniel so much.
So then it's Shanahan by default.
Yeah. I've had enough of McDaniel this year. He's so terrible. Shanahan, at least like he prepares his teams well to play. Like his in-game decision making is horrible, but at least because that
just shows how good the talent is.
I think like every opening
when healthy.
Almost every opening drive for the 49ers, they tend to score. Like so, I like at least he scripts plays well.
Yeah.
At least you could say that for him. Miami,
I think Bill Walsh was the one who started that. I think years ago.
Yeah,
scripting like the first 20, 25 plays, whatever.
Yeah, which
by the way, I thought was a really good idea because it means that you will probably several times during those 25 plays run plays that you might not otherwise run in that situation if you didn't have them scripted, which keeps the defense off balance.
Yeah, it's just script all the plays, and then they'll do really well. I feel like I don't. The injuries will affect my pick in this game. We just don't know enough information yet. But you're right that.
Well, let me ask you this: would your decision be A, play on Miami, or would it be not play? I'm sorry. Would it be not play on Miami or play against San Francisco? Is there a way that you would consider a play on San Francisco?
No.
As opposed to not playing Miami because of A, B, or C, like the tackles, etc.
This is Miami or nothing for me. If Trent Williams and Bosa come back, which I don't see happening, but if hypothetically if that happens, that tells me that the Niners are going to be professional about this. They're going to maybe try to close out the year on a hot streak and maybe build for next year. If they they're playing for this year, but if they, what'd you say that? Did you say that they could be eliminated from one or both before this game starts or not? Yes, if Atlanta and the Rams both win, they are eliminated. I'm sorry, if Atlanta and what? If the Falcons and Rams both win in the 1 o'clock slate, then they're going to be eliminated by. They're eliminated for both the number 7 seed and the division. Yes. Okay. If that's the situation, maybe they start betting Miami, because if I'm San Francisco and you know that that you now have no mathematical chance of making the playoffs, why even consider playing Williams or Bosa? Yeah, that's why I don't think that's going to happen. But if they're both 100%, magically, like suddenly out of nowhere, then but I mean, even if I'm saying if they're eliminated. Yeah, no,
Why even risk it?
right. I don't. Well, the coach does stupid things, so maybe
Well, yeah, but I mean, you're thinking of the player's future and all that, and
yeah. No, I
they're
agree.
already banged up, and I mean, obviously, you would think that with 8 months before training camp that they'd be in good shape
Mhm.
to do that. But why not give some of your younger players a look, some of your backups?
I agree.
Because
Yeah, I totally agree.
it's not quite the same thing with Mahomes, because obviously he's got an experienced backup, and they're playing for something. But if you're eliminated, why risk playing injured players?
Mhm.
So,
No,
which means that if you are able to make a bet, well, you should be able to make a bet on the Miami San Francisco game while the Atlanta Rams game is going on.
right.
So maybe if you see, and maybe you could tell early in the game that there's no way the Giants are going to beat the Falcons, and maybe only slightly more of a chance that the Jets would beat the Rams. Why don't you go in on Miami when you might still be able to get pick 'em or -1?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. See, I disagree. I see Roto saying 49ers know they're done. I don't think they know they're done until this is a team that has a lot of experience. And, the mentality, we as observers, as outsiders, tend to be much more realistic than players and certainly coaches who believe that they can win every game they take the field, whether they're favored by 16 or underdogs by 16. That's the mentality that they're taught to play with. That's inbred in them. So I don't think the 49ers know they're done until they're actually done. I don't know how you feel about that, but
the players usually have like extreme confidence in themselves.
exactly.
So, yeah, I think you're right about that. But if they're told right before kickoff that they can't win, then yeah, that's when
Yeah, but who would tell them that?
I'm sure
Maybe the announcers would, but not the coaches.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they'll hear it from someone. Someone will tell them. I don't know.
Oh, so you know what? There are people who probably tell every team that every week.
That's yeah.
Maybe they're fans of other teams, but or journalists for other teams or whatever. But they hear that stuff all the time. I don't think they ever hear it from the coaching staff,
Yeah.
or even from anyone in the front office or anyone on the payroll, if they want to stay on the payroll.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll know the scores. I mean, they put the scores.
Oh no! Once they find out that the Atlanta's up 37-16
Right.
and the Rams are up 27-14, it may settle in there, and then they get totally deflated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But but you don't. But if you know that you still have a chance to win, as small as it may be, you may need every team in the league to be in a tie. You still have a mathematical chance, although it's unrealistic. I don't. But so is it unrealistic that every team would need to tie? So
Right.
that cancels that out a little bit. But I think as long as the players know that they have a chance to win, unless they really, unless they're objective about it, which they should be, but that's not the mentality. You're taught to play. You play the full 60.
Yep.
Even if you're down. A lot of coaches, they'll preach it, but they don't necessarily believe it when they're in that situation when, they're hopelessly down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
all right. Let's...
So I agree with you. For me, it's also Miami or nothing, and it'll probably be Miami regardless of the situation.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. All right.
Unless, as you say, Williams and Bosa both play, I'd probably still be on Miami, but you might get Miami maybe even as an underdog. I mean, if they're pick 'em with these guys not likely to play, and it's announced that they're playing, maybe the 49ers become the favorite by 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Atlanta loses and the Rams lose, and then Williams and Bosa are active, like suddenly it's like okay, I could maybe see the Niners rallying here, but it's going to take a lot. So yeah, it's something I'm probably not going to play, but we'll see.
Oh, and by the way, do you think if Atlanta and the Rams are winning, that Miami's not going to flash that on the scoreboard?
Oh, of course. They'll announce it.
There's not going to be a bulb malfunction for 2 games.
No, absolutely not.
Or whatever they call the digital. There's not going to be a pixel malfunction.
As they're running out of the tunnel, the announcer might go, and the 49ers have been eliminated from the playoffs.
Eliminated from the playoffs.
Right. If they're smart about it. So let's get to this really exciting game. We have the Jaguars at the Raiders. The Raiders moved to a 1 point favorite.
If there's ever a game deserving of ending in a 3-3 tie, this is it.
What about 6-4 as the Penn State Iowa game from 2004?
Was Iowa's 2 field goals, or was it 3 safeties to out safety the Lions?
That would have been excellent. It's 2 field goals and
or
2
touchdown
safeties.
and missed extra point.
That could be it too. It was 2 field goals and 2 safeties. I still am dying for a 6-1 score. One of these years.
6-1.
Yeah, 6-1 or 8-1. I would love.
What would the 1 be? How would you get 1 point?
You get 1 point from a conversion safety. So if there's a safety on a 2-point conversion, it's 1 point, that's why you can't.
That's like almost impossible.
It has never happened.
You'd have to. I was going to say, and I don't think it ever would. What would you end up having to? It's a 2-point conversion, safety. You're.
So hypothetically, if you even a block extra point, if you block an extra, or if you intercept the ball for the team going for 2 and you run it back and then you fumble and then and then they take a safety, that's 1 point. So you can't. It's impossible to have a 7-1 score because you need this to happen on the extra point try. So it can happen like a team scores 6 and then they go for 2 or something and then the other team scores 1. It's in the rules that it can happen. It's never happened ever. So
now what happens if there's a blocked extra point?
I believe that's 1 point for a safety. It's 1 point.
No, the blocked extra point, and the team somehow ends up getting a safety.
Same
Unlikely.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
By the way, there is a scenario in which I would like to see a 1 point awarded, like the Rouge in football and Canadian football, and that is if you attempt a field goal and it hits the crossbar or the upright, but doesn't go through and bounces back in the field of play, the kicking team gets 1 point.
Oh. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I mean,
you came ever so close, and it just happened to bounce back in the field of play instead of going through. Just to say, hey, Canada, we can outdo you.
I lost the bad beat this year. The only CFL play I made all year. I lost on a Rouge in overtime. So
gee.
I had -1.5, and that favorite went by 1. So that was, I don't know how, I get the Rouge. How do you win on a Rouge? This seems so stupid. But anyway, we can talk about that another time.
I know the whole concept of the Rouge is sort of silly.
Yeah, it's such a gimmick.
But the thought of a 1 point instead of 3, or instead of 0 rather, 1 point, you can't get you could have gotten the 3, but for the bounce.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of dumb rules. I think it's another one we talked about before is why an offensive team loses the ball when they fumble through the end zone.
Yeah, we
give them the ball on the 5 or the 10-yard line. Don't take away the possession.
Yeah, we saw that with Taylor.
Yeah.
It really hurts. So I don't know. We saw two drop.
By the way, we're talking about this as taking away time from Jacksonville and Las Vegas, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, Aiden O'Connell practiced fully twice, so I guess I am on the Raiders. I have nothing beyond that. I mean, do you have anything of substance here? I don't. I really don't.
Not at all. I mean, I think that in the newsletter, again, as that weakest category, which is below an opinion, it's a lean, meaning you may as well flip a coin in that one. Las Vegas, I went at pick 'em against Jacksonville, but never at any point in time that I consider money on it or fake money on it, such as in a contest.
Well, I mean, maybe monopoly money is the best way. I don't.
Not even that, because you might increase the monopoly money and you couldn't read the dollar sign or something on it, so I wouldn't even do that.
That's true. And plus, if you want to play Monopoly, you're going to need the money. Actually mailed Monopoly money once to a spammer. You know, it was one of those fake things where they say, hey, you've inherited this amount of money. We need this deposit. I actually mailed them Monopoly money. They got an angry response.
Oh, you actually got a response?
Yeah, they're angry. They're like why?
No, they're like one of those Nigerian things or something, or
yeah. It's like you wasted
inherited
my time.
14 million.
Yeah. He said that he's angry.
I'd love to do that, because you know what I would say. I'll tell you what. You want my $1,000 to collect it? Why don't you take $5,000 out and send me the rest? Okay, you'll make $4,000 just like that.
Exactly. exactly. Yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, why not?
And I would not expect to hear from them.
Oh no, of course not. Like, no way. Yeah, I love
I don't
how
know why.
he was.
I don't know why more people don't even think of that. Probably because it's not even worth the time to send it in.
Yeah, I love how the spammer
I'm
said
surprised you got a response.
yeah, he complained that I was wasting his time. I was like, well, he tried to scam me. Like,
What do you think you were doing to me?
right, exactly. So,
You know.
I, anyway, I think we can just move on from this one. I
Yeah.
have nothing to say here. Sunday night game, we have Buccaneers at the Cowboys. Buccaneers are -4. So Antoine Winfield and Tristan Wirfs DMP twice for the Buccaneers, but the Buccaneers have been sitting out a lot of players in practice recently, and it just amounted to nothing in terms of the inactives list. So I wouldn't read too much into that. I like Tampa here. I think they, they're kind of on a roll here. And my main angle in this game is that Todd Bowles has played really well against bad quarterbacks. I brought this up a lot the last time against the Raiders when they went up against Aiden O'Connell. Dating back to the start of 2023 when the defense declined and they lost a lot of their pieces from the Super Bowl. They're still 7-2 straight up and against the spread against quarterbacks I would qualify as bad quarterbacks. And I think Cooper Rush is one of them. Now, Cooper Rush has had some good performances past couple of weeks, but they're against the Giants and the Panthers. Like this is a huge step up in class for them here. I don't expect them to do very well, especially coming off a win. I like fading bad teams coming off wins. So, and like I said, Tampa's really improved recently with Mike Evans coming back. Bucky Irving is healthy. The offensive line is coming together. I'm on Tampa. So, who do you like in this game?
I've sort of gone back and forth on this one. I know which side I think I picked. Let me see. No, I actually picked the side that I would be against. Now, I actually put Tampa Bay -4 over Dallas until I thought about it a little bit more. You know, Dallas, but for that botched kick against Cincinnati, would be on a 4-game winning streak. You know, because they won the game against Washington and I think it was the Giants the next week, and then they botched the game against Cincinnati, and then they went to Carolina with nothing to play for, and they were in control of that game from start to finish. So, you know, at least that tells me the Cowboys, even with the lack of talent and all the issues that they have, they've not quit. And, you know, maybe they take this to say, hey, you know what? Tampa Bay is leading the division, but they don't have the tiebreaker, and they are only 8-6, which, and although, to be fair, Tampa Bay with 8-6, they've outscored the opposition, I think, by 77 points. So, and again, I mentioned the teams that they beat: Detroit, Philadelphia, and the Chargers. And they beat the Chargers the most convincingly of the three. So I'm not willing to say that even though Tampa Bay has the advantages, and they certainly have the urgency, especially if Atlanta has one, which they're likely to do earlier in the day, to keep ahead of keep ahead of Atlanta because of the tiebreaker situation. So maybe this game comes down to a field goal. Don't know that I'll play it, but I'm not sure what I want to do because Dallas has continued at least to put forth an effort. And again, even in the game they lost, they likely would have won because if they recover that kick where they should have covered it, they probably get a field goal because they were in field range at that point. So as much as I thought I liked the Tampa as far as being the better team, because there's a lot of good things to like about Tampa, like I think we talked about earlier, you know, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, make your bet on Tampa, although I don't like the odds. I think they're 40-1 or something, and I think that's a little too short considering they're probably, I guess they could make it in as a wild card in the NFC. They could finish 11-6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they have a lot to play for. So I will end up passing on this game. I went down by saying I like Tampa Bay, and I could see them winning and covering. I'm not going to play the game. I'm not going to play Dallas, but I wouldn't be surprised if they cover. I don't think I would pick them for the outright upset.
Selling point here on Tampa, they are 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread against teams that are Group D or F this year. So they've taken care of business at least.
Well, the thing is with Dallas right now, based on their last 4 games, You have you have them as a D team, correct?
Yeah, with Cooper Rush, yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and the offensive line issues.
Yeah. But even so, with all that, they played well enough to win four straight against
Yeah.
fellow teams. And where do you have Tampa Bay? You have an A or a B?
Oh, so Tampa is the team I struggle the most to classify.
Yeah.
I have them as a C, but they could be a B as well. I really don't know where to put
Yeah.
Tampa. I
I
don't
would
know.
put them at worst a B. And then when you look at the teams that they've managed to beat, you know, two of the elite teams in the league has to
Yeah,
count
but
for something.
I know asterisk in both those games though. Like the Detroit game, the Lions are coming off an overtime win against the Rams. Their former quarterback. Like I don't think Detroit was focused in that game, and Detroit outgained Tampa.
Oh yeah, but
462.
not under Dan Campbell. I mean, yeah, they totally blew them away statistically, but they didn't win. That has to be
Yeah,
a negative, even if they're coming off a game against the Rams.
Detroit's they've had some early season letdowns against Seattle last year as
Yeah,
well. It's a September game. I didn't read too much into that. And then yeah, they beat the Eagles, but there was no AJ Brown, there's no Lane Johnson, there was no Devontae Smith, there was
who
no.
was out for Tampa at that time?
I actually pull it up right now. I don't think any was out for Tampa at that point. Let's see.
None of the receivers.
No, they were both in. In week 4, Tampa
Two.
Bay.
Yeah.
Week 4 against the Eagles.
Oh, against the Eagles. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Tampa Bay was missing. Vita came back. He was out week 3. Came back week 4. Kalijah Cansey was out. And Antoine Winfield was out. Those are the only 2 absences they had.
Okay.
Like I said, the Eagles, no AJ Brown, no Devontae Smith, no Lane Johnson, and the defense hadn't been playing nearly as well as it had since after the bye. So there was a much different Eagles team. So I don't really gauge anything from those 2 wins, despite those opponents. But I'll say this: that win against the Chargers last week was really impressive.
That was an eye opener.
Yeah, exactly. So like that was like, okay, maybe I should have him as a B. So
I mean, if they beat the Chargers 23-17, it's a nice win. But the way they handled it, a team that had been playing, yes, it's not so much the 40 points that Tampa scored. It's the 7. Well, no, I'm sorry, it is. It's not so much what they allowed. It's the fact that they scored those 40 points against a team that had been really good defensively.
Yeah. But then conversely, they lose to Atlanta twice. So at that point, the Buccaneers lost to Atlanta twice. So
twice, yeah.
Right. So how do you put them above B? Like I don't.
Well, see, every team has lost at least 2 games this year, so you can always find warts in any team that you want, being selective, just as you can find positives in any team that has 2 or 3 wins. And as a terrible team, you can still find positives in there. I don't always rely on the statistics. I do give credit. Again, when we talked earlier about the combined records of the teams that some teams have played. When I talked about Washington's wins, their 9 wins, that's a large enough size of a database to say they haven't proven that they can beat anybody with a winning record. Okay, it's one thing if they played 3 such games and they couldn't do it, but they've played of the 14 games, they played 9 games that they hadn't beaten a winning team, and the winning teams they played. I know they lost to Philadelphia, and I think there were a couple of other losses to good teams that they had there. But when you're talking about other teams that are sort of in the middle of the pack, I wouldn't necessarily downgrade them. I would just rate them as maybe more volatile or more inconsistent. Because when they're good, they can beat some very good teams, regardless of how they play. They can still beat them. They still made the plays that they need to make. And when they're bad, they can lose twice to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean they also lost to Denver 26-7.
Yeah, but and we talked about it last week. That's not looking as bad a loss as it appeared when it happened.
I don't know. I mean, the next week Denver barely beat the Jets, and we know how bad.
Well, that was a game that was played in the horrible game. That was like a 10-9 game.
Yeah, I know.
But then again, we're being selective. I'm saying the body of work shows that Denver is a much better team when they beat Tampa than we thought at the time that they beat Tampa.
Yeah,
And a lot of again, remember Bo Nix? What was that? His third game of his career.
yeah. I mean, look, I get. Okay, you lose to Denver 20-17. That's fine.
Yeah,
It's 26-7.
yeah. Every team has bad games.
Yeah, but I mean,
most teams, not all of them, but many teams have games where they lose by huge margins.
yeah, but Tampa's had quite a few bad games. Like the two Atlanta losses, the Denver loss, they got obliterated.
What were the scores on those games? The Atlanta games.
36-30 and 31-26. But the second one was a blowout. That was a huge advantage for Atlanta. And
where was that play? Where was that game played? Was that in Atlanta or Tampa? The second one.
It was in Tampa. The second one.
Okay, the first one I think was the overtime game.
Yeah, right. The second one, and as we noted last week, Tampa's home field advantage probably the worst in the NFL.
Yeah. Amongst them, certainly, yeah.
They were obliterated by Baltimore. That was a Group B team. That was not competitive at all. So that's like my challenge here is like if you get obliterated by some of these teams, like how do I put them in Group B? I don't know.
See, when I group teams, I do it very simplistically, and it's not as detailed as what I just basically look at their win-loss record. How they got those wins and losses, it's like Parcells said, your record, you are what your record says it is. Now, maybe your record disguises, although it was like Minnesota 2 years ago with all those close wins, okay? They still managed to win those close games, and then they got, I won't say exposed, but maybe that's what it was when the Giants beat them as badly as they did in that playoff game. But I try to be, teams are going to win and lose games in all different manners. Just like you could take a look at a lot of these games again, I'll use the Baltimore-Dallas game as a very good example. They won the game close, but they were in control all the way. Still, they were one play away from losing that game, and all of a sudden, what should have been a comfortable win ends up being a close loss. So I take a very simplistic way of doing it, and then when I evaluate the individual games, then I take a look at how they've done against similar teams, because most teams that I have in the A, B, C are going to show similar profiles. A lot of the A teams are going to show that they win a number of games by margins, and they lose a number of games close. And are they a good team or a bad team? Well, they've won more games than they've lost, and no matter how they won them, it all counts. Now, when you're handicapping a game, like for example, Washington is 9-5, and now they're playing a team that's 12-2. And that's when I come in and I take. Now, as I said, I wouldn't be shocked if Washington wins this game. But when I'm handicapping it and looking to make a bet on it, I take a look at not only the quality of their wins and losses, but the quality of the opponents that they've played as well. And so that's one of the more dramatic contrasts, I would say. But I would you say what'd you say? You have Tampa Bay as a C?
Yeah. But that's the one I'm not confident about. Yeah.
Well, let's now. What would you do? And maybe it's not a good question, but let's say they beat Dallas on the magnitude that they just beat the Chargers. Obviously, two different quality opponents, but it would, because again, Tampa Bay is playing with need to hold off Atlanta, and they would risk falling into a tie with Atlanta if Atlanta beats the Giants and they lose to Dallas. So if they have an impressive win against Dallas, who is, I guess, a D team. Yeah. How would that influence your ratings adjustment in Tampa Bay, or say, they beat a D team by 35 points, big deal?
Yeah, I don't think
in a quote unquote at this point you'd have to say it's a must-win game for Tampa Bay. Because if they lose, Atlanta's in first.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
And at Tampa Bay, then their best record would be 10-7, I guess, because they'd be 8-7 after being 8-6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what they could if they win like 52-0. Sure, maybe I think about it, but
I don't know. I don't know that 52-0 would be that much difference than say 35-10.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's
if it's like 28-0 and then it's 35-10 at the end, that's a lot different than if it's 21-10 and then the Tampa scores two fourth quarter touchdowns.
Or 2 pick sixes or something at the end. Right. It depends how that happens, but I don't really foresee Tampa moving anywhere with a win against Dallas. Even if it's a blowout. I mean, still, the Charger game was an eye opener. But however,
where did you have them? Did you still have them as a C team before the Chargers?
Yes, I am the C before the Chargers. I did not move any teams from last week's results. Okay. But
because you would not get a chance to upgrade Tampa in the final 2 weeks of the season as they host was it Carolina and New Orleans. I don't think they could do anything to improve it.
No, I don't think so either. I think
what's Dallas now? They Dallas is what 5-9 or I think they're 5-9.
Yeah,
so theoretically, in theory anyway, Dallas could end up 8-9.
They're 6-8. Dallas is 6.
Okay, so they're even better. They're a D team that is playing more like a C team would, especially when you consider that Cincinnati game that I won't say should have been a win, but most likely would have been a win.
Yeah, well, with Dak Prescott out there, that took a hit for their grade. Yeah. So, I consider them a C team with Prescott and a D team with Cooper Rush.
Okay.
I mean,
who led them to the 3 wins? Quarterback. When was Prescott injured?
Prescott got injured in the Atlanta game, where was that? That was week 10, I think.
So in other words, Cooper Rush has been the quarterback who led him to the 3 wins against Washington and the Giants, and last week against Carolina.
Right. Whereas Prescott beat the Browns, the Giants, and the Steelers. The Steelers being the most impressive win there.
Well, the Browns isn't all that impressive, as it turns out.
Right.
We thought it was at the time because we were expecting Cleveland to be a good team.
Yeah, and I thought that the 2 tackles being out for the Cleveland was a big deal, but we saw how bad Deshaun Watson was after that.
And as I recall, didn't they beat Pittsburgh with a late score? And it was 20-17, I think, that Sunday night game.
Yeah, which was completely unbelievable considering what happened after that. The Steelers have been on a tear. The Cowboys have gone down the toilet. And Dallas, it wasn't a fluky win. Dallas outgained Pittsburgh 445-226 in that game. Crazy. I still don't understand that.
See, that's why I might. If Dallas beats Tampa Bay, would you move Dallas up or not? Because you're basing it on who the quarterback is now, but that would be Cooper's Rush's 4th win in 5 games, which could have been 5 out of 5 with him as quarterback. Would Dallas move up from a D to a C?
It would be. I'd find it difficult to move them up.
Because also at that point, wouldn't they be 7 and 8?
Yeah, I don't think they're good. I really they have the pass rush, and that's it. They can't stop the run, can't stop the pass, they can't run.
Yeah, but if you can't do all those things and you're winning games, that says something.
But those wins have been so fluky. I think
they're still wins.
I know, but I think you have to have to really look at how they done it. That win against Washington, Washington did not show up. If Washington,
I mean, they didn't show. They were outplayed.
Yeah,
I cannot discount a win on the road against a division rival.
I think
it's impossible to discount that.
I think what happened was Washington watched Dallas play on Monday against Houston, and they were laughing the whole time. They thought, "Hey, we're going to show up."
That's trying to rationalize a reason for not giving credit to that win. To me, it is anyway. Well, this happened, and now if a team wins by scoring 20, it's like, for example, I could understand that Chicago's win over Tennessee to open the season.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a win because, hey, if you win a game against any NFL team without scoring an offensive touchdown, that's a very fortunate win. Yeah. Or Miami possibly even coming from behind against Jacksonville to win that opening game.
I just can't take that game seriously. I don't think Washington gave their effort.
Okay.
They did not play hard. And Washington still outgained Dallas by 70 yards and 0.7 yards per play.
But that doesn't always mean that you're going to win. There are many teams. Take a look at most teams, and they will have several games where they win and are outgained, sometimes by significant amounts. I mean, look at that Tampa Bay game against Detroit.
Yeah, there were 2 special teams touchdowns in that game too from Dallas.
They count. They count because they also take away another possession that the team could have had to gain yards.
Yeah, but does Cooper Rush score though? I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I
they're
don't,
playing for them and they're winning with them. It all comes down to what you produce. To me, anyway. Now, if Cooper Rush had won these games by throwing 3 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, I'd be more amenable to saying, they won despite Cooper Rush, not because of Cooper Rush. Not that they won games because of Cooper Rush, but I would look at games where they win despite poor plays, let's say, by your quarterback. Maybe he only plays average games. So just an interesting discussion. So that we can hit that over 3, so that we can hit that over 3 hour line that one of the
you bet the over, didn't you?
After you told me about it.
I will say this: Cooper Rush has played better recently, but against 3 of the worst defenses in the NFL. So we'll see how he does against Tampa. Which are
there quarterbacks that played worse than him against 3 worst defenses in the NFL? I'd say probably yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at like someone like Will Levis,
let me now maybe he hadn't had a chance, but has he played well against any decent defenses, or is that an absolute no?
No, he's not. So he's played 6 games. He got destroyed by the Eagles, 34-6. He got destroyed by the Texans, 34-10. Washington, as you said, has the better defense, and Dallas scored 34, but two special teams touchdowns in that game. I think in the fourth quarter, I think Dallas had 10 points at that point, and Rush had in that game.
I think that was a game. Well, maybe it was already a second. Washington defense has improved. I don't know how good it was at the time that they played Dallas. I would not credit a Dallas win over Washington due to a good defense by Washington. Let me put it that way.
So in that game, it was an interesting game. Cooper Rush had the least held the ball for the least amount of time of any quarterback in the NFL in any game this year.
You're talking release time?
Yes. As soon as he stopped the ball, just throw it right away. That was their game plan. They did not want to face anything with Washington's pass rush against their battered offensive line. So they just released the ball quickly to CeeDee Lamb and Rico Dowdle. They just
were they short passes to Lamb?
They were like 5 yards. It was that I remember watching that game. It was like 5 yard to Lamb, 3 yard to Lamb, 4 yard to Dowdle, 5 yard to Lamb. It was like and they just pecked them to death. And Washington just like looked drunk like the entire time. Like they just didn't show up. So and despite this, in the fourth quarter, it was 10-6. Now it went crazy at the end with like all these weird defensive.
Yeah, that was the wasn't that the one with the onside kick return for the touchdown?
Right. Yeah. So Dallas scored 2 touchdowns on special teams in that game. So and one was an onside kick. So that was such a fluky game. So to answer your question, Cooper Rush has not played a great game against a good defense.
Okay.
So yeah, and this is a tough matchup for him with Todd Bowles, as I said. Bowles great against bad quarterbacks. So this is a great test for Cooper Rush. Like if he has a great game here, and maybe you think this through. Now, if Dallas wins this like 13-10, it wouldn't surprise me.
They will have won it largely, you would think, because of their defense, or it could have been Tampa Bay turnovers.
Yeah, and
which I guess you could sort of give some credit. But if Tampa Bay moves the ball, 70 yards into the 15-yard line and then turns it over because they fumbled or something, and maybe not even being hit or something, then you could discount that win by Dallas, and certainly and would certainly more justify keeping Tampa as a C team.
Right, and I mean the pass rush is the strength of this team. Micah Parsons, he's been unbelievable in the games in which he's played. Dallas, I believe, is 3rd in defense overall. Just those games he's played. So So wait, did you have a play on this game? Did we talk about that?
No, I said that I had written up Tampa Bay as I think a playable opinion early on, and then I've sort of looked at it a little bit, and I considered that Dallas is still playing well. I mean, it showed me something going into Carolina, a meaningless game for the Cowboys, and they controlled that game, and Carolina had been playing well against better teams heading into that game. So that sort of took me off Tampa. As I said, I don't know that it put me on Dallas because Tampa Bay, I think, still has a way of winning, but I could see Dallas being competitive. But right now, if I had to redo that right now, I would probably have put Dallas plus the points, but just make it a lean,
Okay.
which means it's probably not going to be a play.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Monday night game. We have Saints at the Packers. This line is Packers minus 14.
It's
Alvin
like Buffalo against New England, except it's not a divisional game.
Right. Exactly. Alvin Kamara unlikely to play. I worry about the Packers' motivation here because
they can't do much.
Yeah.
As far as players are concerned.
Right. They can't win the division. And so you got to think that they're locked into.
I think the number 5, right? The number 5 seed, the first wild card.
Well, no, the second wild card because Minnesota.
Oh, that's right. Minnesota or Detroit would be ahead of them.
Yeah, so they're locked into the 6 almost.
Yeah.
So, like, what do they have to play for? Coming off a big win on national TV, they're playing. Yeah, look, they're this. You know what I think about? Like, this might be like the Tommy DeVito game Monday night where the Giants beat the Packers because the Packers just didn't show up. So it could happen, but the Saints are just so bad. They have so many injuries. Alvin Kamara is going to be out, I assume, and it's going to be Spencer Rattler. I brought up those 68 quarterbacks who've thrown 60 passes or more since the start of last year. Spencer Rattler, 66th, so one spot ahead of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So he's been.
So that was you broke up a little bit. Did you say 66?
He's 66th, one spot ahead of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And by the way, if I didn't have that qualifier, it's just all quarterbacks, Jake Haener would be the worst. So as bad as Rattler's been, he's been
how many now this is based on what, 60 pass attempts?
60 pass attempts, yeah.
Okay. How many did Haener have last year?
This year and last year combined.
You were doing this year and okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's at like 45 or 50 or something. So he's close. So anyway, I think I'm leaning Packers. I'm not going to bet this game. No way. Do you have any play here at all?
I'd lean under.
Okay.
What's it, 42.5, I think, which is a decent number. I can't see the Saints doing much scoring. Packers are a decent defensive team. And again, it's the conditions not conducive for the New Orleans Saints. So, and again, what are they down to? Like a third-string quarterback now, with Carr and Taysom Hill out also still. Kamara out. Where are the points going to come from? And if I'm Green Bay, you look at the Packers. Let me see if I got the number here. Green Bay, they're averaging 144 rushing yards per game. Atlanta's yielding yards. They're like 27th in the league. But why would Green Bay emphasize a passing game with Jordan Love? They're going to need him for games that count. So why not just do a dose of running and maybe even give more carries to someone other than Josh Jacobs? Give him his 10, 15 carries and then spread it around a little bit, shorten the game. So I think that lends itself to the under. Don't know the motivation, don't know the intensity level that the Saints will bring to this game. And as you say, the Packers are basically locked into the second wild card position. I don't know. Can they be caught by anybody? I guess Washington could surpass them. But that would mean they'd beat the Eagles, and their last 2 games are winnable, and that's why they don't need to beat the Eagles to make the playoffs. But I guess they could overtake the Packers if Washington did that. Let me just see with the wild card here, because there's still a lot of teams. I think we've only had 3 teams eliminated. In fact, the Saints actually technically are alive, but they may not be alive once the Saturday Sunday games are over, because the wild card teams in the NFC, I said in the AFC right now, including tonight's game, 9-9-9. Okay, with Baltimore still to play. Minnesota at 12, Green Bay at 10, Washington at 9. And so that actually, how does that still have the Saints in there at 5-9? The best they could do. Yeah, this is wrong. This thing that I'm looking at. They can only end up 8-9, and meanwhile Washington's 9-5 in the third position. So let's see. Dallas at 6-8, I guess technically has a chance to finish 9-8 if Washington loses out and Dallas wins out. And the teams ahead of Washington. Yeah,
they play against each other. So
yeah, but then you have San Francisco, and then you have a pair of 7-7, Atlanta and Arizona, and then Seattle. Well, Seattle is 8-6, so it's unrealistic to think that the Saints, that the Cowboys could win, but they could theoretically still have a winning season at 9-8. How much that matters? Well, I would think that there would be some players with contracts who have incentive to say if you get a winning record, you get X amount.
Right.
Maybe it's if you make the playoffs, and I guess they still could. If that's the clause in the contract, certainly this week you could expect that they would go out there and give an effort to try and get to that 9 wins, which I guess it could make the playoffs. Well, yeah, with only 3 games to play. You got Tampa Bay. Well, no, Tampa Bay's leading the division. Atlanta's the one that could mess things up because Tampa Bay could make the division. If Atlanta catches Tampa Bay, they could both end up 9-8 or 10-7. Atlanta would have to win out, and Atlanta would win the division, and Tampa Bay at 10-7 would probably get a wild card. So we'll know more after this week.
Yeah, we may have to rethink Green Bay being locked into the 6, because if the Packers and the Redskins have the same record, then the Redskins would jump up to 6, and so Washington.
And that what they beat them earlier, the Packers, or
no? I don't know. I don't remember them playing against each other. I think it's just some sort of tiebreaker. So Washington has a tiebreaker over Green Bay for some reason. I put it into the playoff machine. So yeah, I mean, look, I think Green Bay might be more motivated here than we might originally have thought. But at the same time, they are coming off of a statement win on national TV, and I don't know how seriously they'll take the Saints. So,
well, the only thing is Green Bay does need one more win to clinch a playoff spot, I believe.
Yeah. Right. So,
well, I guess Seattle technically could end up 11, and they could end up 11-6. Green Bay would be 11-4, so they would have to win one of their last games. But I think one of them is against. One of those games is against. They played Detroit twice, but one of them is against Minnesota.
Yeah, that's that next week, Green Bay, Minnesota. So yeah,
who do they play in week? Maybe they play Chicago.
Chicago
in week 17, I think. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the final week. Yeah. So.
Because Detroit and Minnesota plays Detroit in week 18. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think again, asking them to win by a margin may be asking a lot. I mean, and again, let me just make sure. I think I did have Green Bay -14 again as a lean over New Orleans. So if I had to play the game, that'd be the side I'd look at. Mm-hmm. But if I did play anything in the game, it would be the under.
Yeah, maybe a 13-point teaser leg here with Green Bay. Green Bay -1 sounds good to me.
I don't know what the line is, but maybe you also look to play New Orleans under their team total.
Yes, I think so too. I mean, with all their,
I'm guessing the line. What's the line in the total in the game? About 42 and a half, or is it higher?
42 and a half.
So basically, let's say 42 at 14. So that's a 28-14.
Yeah.
So I'd say they'd probably make the over/under line 14 and a half.
Yeah, makes sense.
Pay a little bit extra to get that line on 14 to play it under 14 and a half.
Yeah, and I think if the Saints cover this game, I think it's going to be Green Bay very sloppy turnovers.
Yeah.
Kind of like we saw with I meant reference the Tommy DeVito game, last year's Monday night game, where Jordan Love just threw a bunch of interceptions and the Giants got there.
I think we're about 8 minutes away from 3 hours.
That's well.
According to what it's showing here, 7 minutes and 25 seconds.
Yes. Well, we can log off and have the crowd disappointed that we didn't get the 3 hours. So, I mean, we discussed.
Let's say we land exactly on 3 hours.
Right.
Just interrupt. Just hit the pause or the stop at 3 hours. No. I probably won't be playing that Monday night game unless I decide to play the under.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, only player props for me. I don't really see a good angle here, unfortunately. It sucks to not have a great angle on a national televised game, but
I realize that again we talk about it every week. We have the option of selectivity. They've got the 11 to 10 working for them, and if I can feel comfortable about other. In fact, I think I told you I don't think it was while we did the show so maybe so I've already entered my selections for both the Circa and the Westgate, because I was only considering about 7 or 8 teams, and I knew that the other 7 or 8 I was not going to be interested in. I think I was considering the Chargers, the Steelers, the Cardinals, the Eagles, the Colts, the Dolphins, and I think I had the Seahawks, and I think I had the Jets, the Rams in there as a possible.
Okay.
And I ended up eliminating the Rams because I wasn't concerned about and I think I ended up using. Let me see. I'll tell you who I played in the Westgate. I played Chargers, Steelers, Cardinals, Seahawks, Dolphins, and in the Circa, Cardinals, Eagles, Colts, Seahawks, and Dolphins.
Okay.
So
I'm surprised you submitted the Circa early, given that you didn't have the Thursday.
Because I wasn't going to really, because I've been liking those things. Often I'll like some teams early in the week and then I reconsider, but because when I put my newsletter together, I've probably evaluated each game, say 3 or 4 times. Okay. Not with all the information that I ultimately will look at. And then afterwards, before I make my contest selections, I probably look at them another 3 to 4 times, maybe 3 to 5 times. And I found out I started to do that. I think I've looked at it another 3 times since. I haven't lessened my enthusiasm for any of them, and that even includes with some of the updated injury reports. In other words, very often, early in the week, I'll say that I'm looking at these teams, but I'm also considering the possibility of playing the other side. But this week I wasn't able to find enough convincing reasons to get myself to play the other side. And I knew I did want to play. Interesting enough, Chargers were one of the games where I was considering Denver, but the more I looked at it, the more I thought that that the Chargers were the right side. And of course, it could have gone either way until late in the game. But again, the full 60-minute counts. And I don't think that I would not say that was a fluke result tonight. Denver controlled the first half. The Chargers controlled the second half. And, that's when the game was pretty much on the line. So often I will find cases for the other side. And I guess with the Colts and the Titans, I said that the Colts are the better teams. They should win. Can Tennessee play decently for a second week in a row? I mean, the other thing is, they're 2-12 against the point spread. And it doesn't take a big win for the Colts to make it 2-13. And the Colts, they're, an average team. They've been outscored on the season, but I think I summed it up in the last line of the write-up. Tennessee's playing for next year. Colts are playing for this year.
I don't even know what Tennessee does next year with the quarterback situation. Like, do they?
I think that's what maybe Mason Rudolph has a chance to prove that in the final 3 games he can be an answer. I mean, he did okay when he filled in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
wasn't terrible.
Much better support.
And he didn't have a lot to work with.
Well, at least he had, he had a great coaching staff.
Yeah, that's true.
That.
But the coaching staff doesn't catch passes.
Yeah, I mean, he did have Pickens and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
It's better than what he has. I know Ridley's there.
Better than what he has. Well, that's better than what he has in Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I just Tennessee just seems like a complete dumpster fire to me.
No, that's why I like the Colts this week. That they don't win pretty, and they've only covered 3.5 twice this year, winning by 5 and 6. Mm-hmm. They do have a couple of 3-point wins there, I believe.
Yeah,
but that's one where I found it very difficult to make a positive case for Tennessee. Not that I couldn't make negative cases for Indianapolis, because I could, but if I'm going to play a game, I said that normally you could make a case for every team in a game. As you get later into the season, it's much more difficult to make any positive case for Tennessee.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. To make a positive case for Tennessee, you got to have a lot of if. And I don't like to make positive cases by using more than 2 ifs. And even then, it's a little bit, because then you're straining to make an argument.
I'll say this, so I think Tennessee can run well on the Colts. They have Pollard. If Pollard's healthy, the Colts' run defense is pretty bad. I think Tennessee could score in this game if they show up. Now, given the quarterback change, maybe they don't, because they may not have any faith in Rudolph. But
I think I'd have more faith in Rudolph than I would in Levis at this point.
Yeah, Levis.
And I think the players have to feel the same way.
Yeah, Yeah, maybe, but Rudolph has failed before.
I mean, unless
Although
they really like Levis, for other
in
reasons. Maybe he
in
shows some
Rudolph's
leadership skills that we don't know about.
in Rudolph's defense, he had a horrible game against Detroit, but that's Detroit. Like
Yeah.
an easier opponent here. I think he could do better, but it's tough to have faith in this team. I was completely off the game, so
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I
No,
didn't know.
I've liked the Colts simply because, again, they still have an outside chance at the playoffs. And again, it's not a matter of what we think; it's what they think.
Mhm.
And that Tennessee really seems to have packed. I mean, to be 2-12 against the point spread, that takes a lot of doing because you're not going to get. I mean, that means you're not playing too many close games, and the close games you're playing, you're not playing well. It was kind of like last week. The analogy I can make is the game between Kansas City and Cleveland. Or I think I said Kansas City was 4-8-1 against the spread, and Cleveland was 4-9 against the spread. And I said the analogy is Kansas City's winning games, but they're not winning by enough. Cleveland is losing games, and they're losing games by too much.
Mhm.
And I can say
Yeah.
the same thing with Tennessee here. That Indianapolis, they're competitive, but for the most, I think what I say, seven of their 9 losses were by a touchdown or more, and 7 of the 11 games that they lost were by double digits. In other words, only 2 of the games that they lost by 7 or more were lost by exactly 7. The other 9 were lost by double digits. I think that's correct, if I recall.
Yeah, they played some tough games though. They played 6 games against Group A and Group B teams.
Yeah.
Um, and really, like I said before, only 3 games against Group D and F. Although that's the
Yeah.
same thing in the Colts. The Colts have only had 3 games against Group D and 0 against Group F.
Yeah.
So and yeah, the Colts have had 5 games against Group A and Group B. They at least beat the Steelers. That was their only
Yeah, I wouldn't
win.
expect them to have won any of those games.
Yeah, they only beat the Steelers 27-24. And whereas
I think I lost
Tennessee,
you there for about 15 seconds.
I'll say the
Yeah, Tennessee
only
beat Miami without Tua.
yeah.
You know.
But that was without Tua. I had Miami's
Yeah.
Group D.
But that was a nice win at Houston.
Yeah, although I've Houston Group C. I don't like Houston very much. I've in Group C. But yeah,
They outgained them, I think, by about 100 yards in that game.
they did. It was 369 to 260, and then 5.6 to 4.8. It just shows. I think that just shows you that Houston's not as good as the record is.
No, I don't think so. I think this is not far from the team that they were last year.
Yeah, or even the beginning of the year because they beat the Bills in Week 5. I think losing Stephon Diggs was just a big factor.
They also got blown out by 27 in Minnesota early in the season. Houston.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah. All right, we are over 3 hours. we
okay. I mean, I'm taking a look now at who and again, it was a fluky game, but Tennessee lost to a Chicago team. They lost to a Jets game by a team by 7. So they, so we're talking. Where do you have Chicago? A D?
I had him as a C before the coaching firing, and now that they don't have a coordinator, now I have him as a D.
Yeah. Let me see who else they lost to. The Colts, I guess, a 3-point game. They didn't cover now because they were favored. I can understand why they were. Although, to be fair, Indianapolis was 9-8 last year, so I could have understand that Indianapolis having been favored at Tennessee by a little bit. Let's see. They did beat New England, which is I guess an E team, or do you have them as a D? Probably an E.
I have I had New England as an F with Brissett and a D with May.
Okay. They lost at home to Jacksonville by 4, of course, but that's still a loss. That wouldn't help them in this game at plus 3.5.
Yeah.
Is Jacksonville an F or a D?
So with Trevor Lawrence and Cam Robinson at the start of the year, I had him as a C, and now I have him as an F with no Cam Robinson, and then Mac Jones starting.
Mac Jones, yeah.
Yeah, which is much worse. But when they had Trevor Lawrence, they almost beat Miami to start the year. They were more competitive for the most part. They lose to the Packers by 3. Like they fought hard. They were blown out by Buffalo, but still, like I said, to start the year 20-17 against Miami, and I thought they were 8-3 at one point last year too, before Lawrence got hurt. So I thought they could bounce back.
Yeah.
They're coached very poorly too.
Yeah, you almost wonder how Peterson won a Super Bowl against the Patriots.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was.
Well, he did have a very talented team, but nonetheless.
Yeah. Right. I feel like his two coordinators that season did a lot for him. And we saw once those coordinators left, we saw him decline.
Yeah, last year that was the year where last year was when they started 10-1 and then went 1-5.
Yeah, well, no, that was Sirianni, but Sirianni also had.
Oh, Sirianni, yeah, but okay, yeah, I'm saying that the Eagles, yeah, yeah, that's right. He lost the coordinators and they had to dip off the following year.
Yeah, it's funny because Peterson lost his coordinators and then he declined, and then Sirianni lost his coordinators. They declined last year, but now Sirianni has two new really good coordinators again.
Yeah,
so it's funny how people always talk about the head coaches, but the coordinators are so important.
Oh yeah. I wonder if there's a place offshore that has a prop up of where Ben Johnson will be head coach next year.
You could probably
with one of the options being he won't be a head coach because he'll stay with Detroit.
Right. Well, I mean that was his thing this year where he said unfinished business.
Yeah.
But it's funny every time the Lions play against a team that is going to be in the market for a head coach. That's when he runs most of his trick plays. It's almost like it's a job audition, almost.
Well, is it, or is it? Hey, the guy's a little off center, and you don't want a coach who's going to take too many chances with trick plays if they don't work.
Yeah, but if they're winning by a lot and scoring a ton, then it's like, how do you not be impressed? So, all right, Andy. Let's. Do you want to talk about the logicalapproach.com before we?
No, I just mentioned. In fact, right after the show, I'm going to put the spreadsheet up. I took a couple times to change it. They had a change in one of the bowl games where Marshall pulled out of the Independence Bowl because they don't have enough players on the roster medically cleared because they had a lot of guys enter the transfer portal. The coach decided to leave, and Louisiana Tech, which is a bad team, but they're playing close to home, is replacing. So I had to do a little manipulation in that one as far as some of the numbers that I use and common opponents and all that to face Army. In fact, I think it was a competitor. I think Army was maybe about a 6-point favorite against Marshall, and now they're like 16.5 against Louisiana Tech, even though the Louisiana Tech campus is about an hour. No, I think it's less than an hour away from where the bowl game is playing, and I can't see the cadets traveling down from West Point to watch the at least I don't think they call it the Whedon Pool Eater Bowl anymore. But anyway, the spreadsheet will be up probably, let's see, it's about 3:17 your time. I'll say by 6 a.m. your time it'll be up.
Okay, that's when I head to bed, so that's nice.
So
yeah,
probably a little earlier, but just
yeah. Guys, check out the Logical Approach.
And as I said, by Saturday and hopefully earlier, the postseason package will be up there.
Okay, yeah, and subscribe to Andy's newsletter. Lots of great stuff in there. He has his college playoff picks as well. Like I said, if you guys want to enter the contest, contact Andy to be your proxy, or contact me. I'll get you in touch with Andy. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. I will be back on Saturday. Our usual Saturday co-host, Tom, is going to be off. He's traveling for Christmas, so. I will either be doing it solo or we're going to have someone else on. Not sure yet. But I do have to get Christmas shopping done. So it'll be a shorter episode than this. I promise. I really have to. This is my last chance to do Christmas shopping. So I have to get that done at some point on Saturday. So, all right, Andy, always great to do the show with you. Always looking forward to it. And I love, we read a lot this week. So a lot of interesting discussion as you're
doing one next week, the day after Christmas.
I will be doing a show on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and at the day after Christmas. So I don't miss any time here.
I will try to make myself available. I think that's probably a good favor to do that.
Okay,
almost
awesome.
Certain. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got some people coming into town, but I think they're coming in like on the 27th and 28th, so that would not affect
Okay.
the 26th.
Okay. All right. Great. Yeah, I think the only co-host that may not make it is Kenny because it's,
Oh, by the way, we'll only have 13 games to talk about because you
Yeah.
got the 2 Wednesday and the 1 Thursday.
That's true. So maybe it'll be a 2.5-hour show. We'll see.
Or 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Right. All right, guys. Hope you have a great night and a great start to your weekend. And good luck with your bets.
And I'll wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, whatever you observe. And of course,
Yep.
I'll save it for next week to wish a Happy New Year.
I'll echo that and happy Festivus for the rest of us.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Exactly. All right, guys. Have a great night. I'll talk to you later.